Six-pack Lapadat, Marcellus Williams back, the Swolefessor. We were just talking about, we'll get into like powerlifting, uh, the world championships in which you got some kings crowned and you guys made your debut at the world championships. Find out, your thoughts on it, your feel of it. Was it exactly what you expected? I mean, there's a lot that happened at this world's, man. Not just with
Yeah,
your team, but period. Soaking it
yeah,
up and everything and moving forward. SBD rally and Chris Perez did phenomenal, and Jamar did his damn thing, and talk about the team and moving forward to Sheffield and everything. We'll hit up on all those different topics, but we're just asking you about. I was just asking about the Olympics, and you were saying how you haven't been watching a lot, and I'll let you say it.
yeah. I'm just flat out not watching it. Like I said, I'm a Christian. I take my faith very seriously. The Bible talks about lukewarm Christianity, where you're kind of like it's just you're Christian in word only and not in how you actually live and stuff like that. And for me, just the way the opening ceremony was, which they can try to spin it and say whatever they want, they can apologize and kind of stuff, but which is a blatant mockery of the Last Supper, a blatant mockery of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So for that reason, I'm just not watching it. Like, you know, that's my decision. What anyone else chooses to do, whether they think like, oh, I don't think it's that serious, or oh, I'm still gonna watch this and that, that's fine. But for me, it's like that is my way of taking my stand, where it's like I'm not gonna tolerate what I believe to be wrong. The world's gonna be the world. The Bible teaches us that. And at the end of the day, I expect the world to be the world, yes, but I'm going to be what God calls me to be, and I'm still going to stand up for what's right. And that's not me speaking out of hate for anyone, but it is me speaking out for hate against the action that was done. I just thought that was incredibly disrespectful. And like I said, it's a thing where if if it would have been like them doing something to mock, Judaism, them doing something to mock Islam, no matter what, doing something like that on the world stage, where it's supposed to be about different countries, different cultures, different people coming together to compete together, and almost in a way like not that it takes away from all the stuff going on, like the war stuff like that, but to almost like, hey, let's try to unite and let's just compete as athletes to open up the Olympics, which has always been about that, with something that's just blatantly mocking an entire religion, entire group, an entire people. When there's Christians in pretty much almost every nation, that was just too much for me. And I was just like, the moment I saw that, I'm like, I'm not watching the Olympics this year. Like, there's no convincing me. Like I said, if some of the athletes that I want to watch, like if they post up to their personal Instagram page or something like that, cool. But as far as like watching the actual Olympics or the Olympic YouTube or like that, I'm not doing it. It was just too disrespectful for me, man.
It was surprising because usually in sports you're trying to not drag politics into sports as much as possible. Like this sports is supposed to be where you don't get into that kind of thing. And if you're going to do art or an artistic interpretation or something, if I go to an art gallery or if I go to a play or if I go to whatever, that's exactly what I'm going for, right? Like whatever, like you're anticipating this. But when you tune into the Olympics, you're not like, give me your artistic rendition of the Last Supper and do like what the heck? I just want to see someone throw some javelins, run 100 meters, and box. You know what I'm saying? I want to see someone do some weightlifting, some clean and jerks. I'm not looking for your artistic interpretation of whatever message you're trying to give. Like it's not like if I was in a meeting with the IPF media team and I said, hey guys, you know how I think we should open up the 2024 IPF World Championships and gave that idea? Or I'm talking to SBD. I'm like, hey, you know what we should do for this year's Sheffield? You know how we should open up the ceremonies? People will be like, I take whatever scene from whatever religion, any religion, whatever. They'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? That has
Yeah,
nothing to do with powerlifting. And why would we do that? Like
yeah,
the different and like look at athletes can take political stances or whatever, and sometimes you get thrust
mm-hmm.
upon. The number one athlete that I look up to all time is like Muhammad Ali, and his story is phenomenal. But everybody's trying to be Muhammad Ali, whatever. That's a whole nother different discussion. Everybody's trying to be like pick their point and be like, I'm like the next Ali when I make this stance. But anyways, that kind of gets on my nerves. That's a social media era where everyone wants to be relevant. But beyond that, it's different when the athlete does. It's a whole nother enchilada when like I mean, meet director isn't the term. I'm using powerlifting terms. This is the Olympics, for God's sakes, a little bigger than that. But the
Yeah,
organization's
the
like, let's
organization.
do this. And
Yeah,
it's like, whoa, be easy. Like, remember, people aren't tuning in for this. There's other avenues and other places to give this kind of artistic interpretation of whatever you were going for. I don't know. Maybe, that's the thing with art. When you throw it up there, it can be taken 100 different ways. And that's what art's supposed to be. And to your point of when I tune in, that it wasn't tuning in for that. If you went to an art gallery, you'd be like, I don't know what this person's going for. Maybe I like it, maybe I don't, but I know they're going for something. Gotcha. I'm here for that. There's 100 different ways to interpret it. When I turn on the Olympics or any sports, you're like, my man, I don't need to have a conversation with my kids trying to explain to them this artistic rendition and what they think they're going for. And I don't even know what they're going for. I don't
yeah.
know what I'm looking at. And it's like, let me see some beach volleyball, Playboy. I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at. You're right.
Yeah,
It was weird.
very like you said, what an individual chooses to do as an athlete, what they choose to stand for, represent, that is what it is. But you as the collective organization, knowing that hey, what we do impacts everybody, represents all of these nations. And you're like, so you've seen different people say like, oh, it actually didn't represent that, represent this. Listen, the point is there's no way they had their entire system or group look at that and not realize this looks very much like this. So either it was intentional, or if they want to say it wasn't, it was close enough to where they were way too passive with that. And clearly enough people thought so because they end up having to apologize for it, take it down. They lost sponsorships over it. And man, call me whatever you want to call me. I think it's intentional. Like there's no way it was that blatant and that close to it. It just wasn't. Like they can try to spin whatever they want. They can have whatever fallback they want. That's what it looked like to me. And at the end of the day, like I said, each individual can handle things how they want to. But I'm just not big on being passive when it comes to my faith or being passive on what I stand for. And that's with anything because like I tell people all the time, a big part of who I am as a powerlifting coach, right? The way I go about my coaching, the way I go about things like as a father, as a husband, is all founded in the basis of my faith. I believe in everything you do to the glory of God. So it's kind of like, for me, I can't sit here and enjoy things like the success of the coaching, success of my household, and all that kind of stuff if I'm going to be passive with what I know to be the source of that, which is my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So for me, it's like it wasn't even a hard decision. Like the moment I saw it, I was like, all right, well, I told you we're not watching the Olympics this year. That's it. It's because
The shame.
it's
It's a shame.
wild.
And to your, like, when they say, it wasn't actually about the Last Supper or whatever, how did everybody watching not interpret it? Like, how did they interpret it like that? And it wasn't. That was crazy. If it
Yeah,
isn't, how did nobody see this movie? Hey guys, you know what this kind of looks like? We might want. It kind of looks like we're mocking. We're taking like man, if you're at a dinner party, they say don't bring up politics and religion. Don't bring up, like they say, just skate that fine line and just whatever, have a good time. That's usually what you're going for. It's like, all right, don't bring up these two things when you're doing whatever, just period in life, just to
yeah,
avoid conflicts. If it was complete, how could it possibly be a complete coincidence? Or even if it was and they got put together like that, nobody watching wasn't like, hey, yo,
yeah,
wait, before we do this, you know what this kind of looks like to me? Like
yeah.
nobody
The
proofed
exact
this.
same positions, the exact same everything. And there's even layers to beyond it, bro. Like even like, people can feel however they want about stuff like, the trans, the drag, like that. But the fact that they had a child up on the stage, right? And you look at it, like one of the children was right, one of the dudes that the child was standing in front of, dude, the dude's testicles were kind of like basically hanging out of his pants. You have a child right there in front of him. Like that's crazy to me, dog. Like it's like it's once again, it's also the fact of this has never happened before, like ever. Like to your point, if you go to an art gallery, right? There's certain things we expect to see. Me, if I go to a movie, go watch a movie, right, made by Hollywood, stuff like that. There's certain things that I can probably expect to see. I can sit there like, oh, I think that's too far. I'm finished should have done that. But it's like, where have you been if you don't expect Hollywood to do certain things in movies, right? But we've never ever had anything like that at the Olympics, like on the world level stage. It's supposed to be like unity and stuff like that. It's just crazy. This is crazy, and it's one of these things where it's like, like I said, I don't think they would do that for, like against Islam or Judaism, like that. And that's not to say that that would be better, because it's like, that's not what the Olympics is supposed to be about. So, like to your point, it's like, imagine IPF. First of all, I'll tell you right now, if they would have opened up IPF Worlds like that, I can guarantee you me and my roster would have been gone. I can guarantee we would not.
It would never happen though.
We would have.
That'd be
Yeah,
the
of course.
wildest
Yeah,
shit in
we
the
would have
world.
dipped. We would have dipped. We would have been like, all right, well, glad we made it this far, but that's it for us. So yeah, no.
It was just I didn't actually notice that second part you were talking about, like nudity on. That's a whole nother discussion, like how
Yeah,
nudity and whatever. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah. Again, it's more just like a placement type deal. Look, I understand art is supposed to make you question things and push boundaries or whatever. This wasn't an art gallery, man. This wasn't. We weren't signing up for that. We were not looking to push boundaries with the opening ceremony of a sports event. That's
yeah,
kind of where people are like, I guarantee you there's art galleries and different things all over the world where this is all types of stuff where it's making you question things and making you think about things, whatever. Gotcha. Gotcha. Listen, I listen to fucking music that's questionable or, it's like, yeah, okay, but you know what? I know what I'm going for, but I think it's because it's the placement in all contexts and whatnot. And it's like, was that the place where you're going to in
yeah.
Frig, with
Am
all
I
the wars with religion and what going on, let's
yeah.
not right
Let's
now.
not do that, bro. And then my biggest thing is this: look, regardless of your personal views on whatever things, price, morality, whatever, just from a long-term perspective for the organization, if your goal is okay, we want as many people watching as possible. We want to keep as much money from the sponsorship as possible. Let's maybe not do something that's going to piss off millions and millions of people across the globe. You know what I'm saying? Let's maybe not risk that. You would think that they wouldn't be accounted for stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll talk. We not to dwell on too long, but it is. I am the type that like I don't like I'm getting into politics, dragging it into sports, and certainly not by promoters and whatever in terms of like let's make a political statement about religion.
yeah,
That's like that's a
yeah,
nightmare. What do
yeah,
we what? But
yeah.
anyways, like yeah, it was surprising. But I'm usually like usually Olympics aren't like that. In the Olympics, I do like the idea globally of the Olympics and some of the we have. Did they start the track and field yet?
I don't think so. Not quite yet. No, I don't think so.
The track and field is where it's at for me.
Yeah.
When it comes to the 100 meters, right before the 100 meters, there's nothing because it's over in 10 seconds.
Mhm.
There's nothing, and you see, like, especially in the era of Usain Bolt, and when they showed, like, he was such like a showman, leading up to the tension before the gun goes off. It's like insane. I am like on my feet, like, holy shit, it's about to go down. And you're
Yeah.
looking at all these guys' faces, and I mean, their reaction to the starting pistol going off just a stitch too soon. You do that twice. Usain Bolt was ejected and Johan Blake won the world
Mhm.
championships. You can't be too soon. And if you're stitched too late because you don't want to be too soon,
Yeah.
try to catch up in less than 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah.
Your reflex reaction time has to be so on the money,
Yeah.
like a superhero. And then
Yeah.
how fast they are. And it's just I absolutely love it. And
Yeah.
at one point, like that's probably the number one event for me, if I'm honest. Even
Yeah.
though there's like Olympic
Yeah.
weightlifting and the whole nine.
No, for me, it's definitely that too. Like that's the thing where like, like me, my dad, my mom, Sabrina, we get together and watch it because it's one of the purest forms of just straight athleticism, man. Like it's really
Yeah.
like two guys on the line racing, who's faster. And like you said, it goes beyond just speed reaction time, man. Like it's funny because if we think about it, it's such a simple thing, right? In essence, like it's two people racing each other on foot, but there's so much that goes into it, and it's one of the most impressive things you're ever going to see, in my opinion, in terms of like just pure athleticism. Like when it comes to stuff like like track, and even MMA and stuff like that. Those are two things where I'm like, this is just like athleticism in its rawest form. You know what I mean? Like two guys going against each other, two women going against each other, like just hands to hands, or two people racing each other. So yeah, and I'm gonna miss out on watching it for real.
And
But
luckily, if you are going to take Instagram highlights, it's only 10 seconds. You can see the whole damn thing.
yeah, yeah,
At least
yeah,
you got that. But in terms, I do think it's because they're with the race. And we use the term like if you're racing against someone in like if you're in sales and it's a race between who can get to this or whatever, we use these terms so much that when you actually see two people race side by side, it's so natural to watch competitively and they are side by side.
Mhm.
You visually see them side by side if someone breaks away or whatever. And it's also something that all around the world throughout history, even before organized sport, you could race. You don't need nothing. Let's just starting line, finish line. Let's see who gets there first. It's everyone around the world understands. I don't need to understand the equipment. I don't need to understand the rule. The rules are pretty simple, huh? Just run forward,
Mhm.
foot over foot. Let's see who gets there first. And it's simple, but it's at the same. It's kind of like powerlifting. People who don't know powerlifting think it's overly simple and don't realize how many cues and technical things there are. And I've read, like, I'm super into sports, period. So I've read Michael Johnson's autobiography, who was gold medalist 200 meters and like a old time great in track. And I read Usain Bolt's autobiography, which is phenomenal, by the way. And the amount of technical in terms of like off the blocks, the way you have to position yourself, as you can imagine, just like with the squat, you're not just coming up and down, all the different cues and whatnot. There's different phases, even though it's 10 seconds from out the blocks to the middle phase. And then when you have to actually, even when you bring your head up, if you lift your head too soon, you're in big trouble. Like,
Yeah.
fractions of a second means you're back to full stride the whole nine. It's insane. And that's why also at the end, when some of them are in the lead and showboat a little by raising an arm and putting up the one before they cross the line, for us, we think, well, that's pretty good. You're flexing. I got you. No, when you actually read about how much time lost from breaking form just to celebrate a stitch early is such a flex because of that. It's like it's it's like deadlifting and taking one hand off the bar before it's locked out. It's like
I was,
crazy.
I was gonna say we can even give everything just say we compare to powerlifting for multiple reasons. One, because like I said, it's a fairly simple thing on the surface, right? But the higher level you get, the more each factor matters. For example, if you take two kids, like two 10-year-old kids, something like that, right? And they race. Even if one gets like we've seen this all the time, or you've experienced as a kid, even if like a kid gets like a jump start, if you're just faster than that kid, you can still pass them back up, right?
Yeah.
That's not happening at the highest level. If you get that early start, it is going to be like if you miss your start, it's going to be very hard to pass, right? And then to your point with the technique thing, it's the same thing with powerlifting. It's kind of like, look, when you first start and you just want to like 200-300 pounds, your tech can be off. You can like dive, bump, do all kinds of stuff, and still kind of grind your way through it, right? That gets a lot harder with 500, with 600, with 700 pounds on your back. Or, in the case of someone like Ashton, 800, or Jesus, 1,000 pounds, like every little technical deviance matters that much more. And I think that's what's funny about it. It's like these are fairly relatively straightforward, simple tasks compared to maybe something like, basketball, football, throwing a javelin, something like that, right? But every little part, every little piece of what you're doing matters. The stronger you get, or the faster you get, the higher level you compete at it, right? So there's definitely parallels to be made there for sure.
And maybe like raising the hand before you cross the finish line. Maybe it's not like in the deadlift, taking one hand off. Maybe it's more simple. Maybe it's more
I think it's like for the squat, if someone starts like screaming like, "Yeah, I got this," and they're only halfway up, and then they lose position. Yeah,
releasing the brace. I was just
yeah,
about to say that.
yeah,
I was just
yeah,
about to say you release bracing a little bit on the squat and you're celebratory, and then it turns into a fight more than, and you're
yeah,
like, okay, you
yeah,
got a little ahead of yourself, didn't you? It's kind
yeah,
of like that, but it's a
yeah.
huge flex if, like, to your point about at that level to raise your hand and be like, well, I can release the brace early on this. I'm ahead
Mhm,
is insane. And when
mhm.
Usain Bolt was doing that, we thought like, okay, cool. But if you're in track, you realize, wow, he's so far ahead of these guys. He could have shaved off even more off that time if he like went over the finish line then celebrated. He did that on purpose to just be like, I can because I can.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
Usain Bolt changed it. Usain
yeah.
Bolt to an extent changed it. Um, and even like, man, I've been watching the Olympics I've been crazy busy. We were talking about before we hopped on here with my life, like moving and everything. But previous Olympics, I remember watching, and it was the high jump. No, it was the pole vault. Okay. So pole vault, you have kind of like powerlifting. I think you got 2 to 3 attempts at every height, but you have 2 or 3 attempts. So that's what's close to powerlifting. And as it gets higher, fewer and fewer people are landing it with their attempts. All three of them miss, you're out of there. So the field starts with 10 guys or ladies, depending on the division, and you move up to, at the end, there was just two. And I had it on in the background, kind of like, whatever, near the end of my night. And this thing kept getting higher and higher till there's only 2 guys left. I'm like, I can't go to sleep until I see how this story ends. And one of the guys was a Frenchman who was the defending world champion, and we're at the Olympics now. The other guy, I forget what Olympics it was, but he was part of the host nation. And I'm like, oh, this is the defending world champ against the hometown kid. And I mean, you've seen the Olympic stadiums where 50, 60, 70,000 people there live watching. And I'm like, fuck, what's going to happen here? And they're rising the bar each and every time he hits, puts the pressure on, and they're looking at each other. The other guy hits and he grabs his pole vault pole and looks at him like, I'll see you on another step up. And they keep rising, rising, rising. And it's like, hey, man, who's going to blink? Who's going to blink? And then eventually they get to this one weight, and the defending world champ, the Frenchman, pole vaults up, smokes the pole, and I'm like, oh. And so it falls off. He misses. He doesn't get over the pole. He hits it, and crashes down on the pad, and 70,000 people erupt because they're thinking he's got another attempt, but they're thinking, holy fuck, we just won the world championships. And they all erupt, and he's there on the mat with his head down for a second. And I'm like, fuck, what that might feel like with 70,000 people rejoicing. And he hops off the mat, grabs his pole vault, looks off into the crowd with disdain, and goes, and I'm like, fuck yeah, King. Get back on there, King. And I'm not French. I'm not even into pole vaulting, man.
Yeah.
But he walked back to that starting line and says, I got one more attempt. Thank you. And I've never been more invested about silence these fucking guys, King.
Yeah.
Silence them, man. And when he hit that, I'm 2:00 in the morning. I'm like up on my feet, like, yes, yes. Yeah. He nailed it on the second attempt. I'm like, that's it. And this is where like 9 times like, throughout the years, I'm not going to watch pole vaulting, but if it's on in the Olympics, every now and then a story pops up. That's one thing I do like about the Olympics is every now and then you hear some crazy stories. Like there's some water like boating events, and one team was far away in the lead. Storm hits, and nature don't give a shit about the timing of your event. Storm hits, and some boats back, like they're getting lapped because some of these nations are sending people and they're kind of just happy to be there. So they're getting lapped. The one boat of the nation that's kind of happy to be there, totally tips over, rocked over. People are in the water and it's storming. And one of these nations in the lead that were lapping them and going to medal stopped, pulled back, and saved them and pulled them onto their boat. And it's like, and they fell off the podium. Stories like that, or stories like the one I saw, where it's not even necessarily heroic, but there are heroic stories. This is what I love about the Olympics. Sports kind of brings that out. Or two nations who are in real life at war, the two participants participate against each other, and at the end they shake hands and be like, we're just people.
Yeah.
We're just people, man. We'll put that aside. There's a lot of good stories coming out of it as well.
Yeah, I think it's cool is that like sports, it really is something that unites people because that competitive spirit or that wanting to overcome the pressure, or even just being united over, hey man, we're from different countries, we speak different languages, but we love the same thing. You know what I mean? That was one of the coolest parts about like IPF rules for me. You asked me earlier, so we're gonna get to like what that was like for me. Did it meet my expectations, stuff like that? I did a whole, I think it was maybe like 10, 15-minute Instagram video just talking about my thoughts and feelings towards rules. It far surpassed my expectations.
Is that right?
Yeah, easily. And granted, a lot of people that have been to past worlds told me this world particularly still was different, and that even the entry vibe was different. But for me, it far surpassed my expectations in so many ways. I mean, first of all, like where we were in Lithuania was just awesome. Like everyone was very friendly. People went their way to try to speak English if they're able to and stuff like that. I was able to bring my dad with me for kind of like a post-retirement trip for him and stuff like that. So for him to be able to see, me and kind of see me like more in my element, stuff like that was cool. Because my dad's been supporting me since I started probably in 2015. He watches the live streams when I'm competing or when I'm coaching. He comes to all of my meets, stuff like that. So him being there was cool and being able to like meet people that he's heard me talk about, stuff like that. So just on a personal level, it was cool from that standpoint. But as far as like just the world itself, man, let me tell you, And it's funny because, you told me this was going to happen. Matt Gary told me this was going to happen. But the level at which it happened was crazy. I was not expecting for me and the team be shown as much love as we were, man. Like, I'm talking anywhere we were with those pilots, whether it was the warm-up room, the actual meet, or we had a restaurant run to people want to come up and talk to, like other people say, like, man, we've been waiting for y'all. Been waiting for you guys to come over here. And it was crazy. And just being able to talk to people where they tell you, like, hey man, like your YouTube content probably now, like it's helping with this and this, it's helping refine this and this. Talking to Jurins and him, the experiences, and say, oh yeah, man, we watch your stuff. Like, we learn from you. We learn from, like, when you guys are saying stuff, we listen to stuff like that. Incredibly humble, man. Incredibly humbling, not just as a coach, but as someone who's just a power lifter, to know that, wow, the stuff I'm doing and putting out is helping these champions, these world level caliber lifters do things they want to do. Having coach, like I get this coach like come up and like, you take a picture with me, is like, bro, hell yeah, I'll take a picture with you. Like, what are you kidding? It was overwhelming. It was really cool from that aspect. But then also, man, just the energy of every session. I can truly say, not necessarily in the sense of the amount of people that were there, but I've never experienced something where you can feel the energy of like every single person in the room, the refs, the commentators, everyone watching is so invested and cares, man. Like when a lifter comes on and the crowd, right? Like whatever country they're from, the nation is going so hard for their lifter. It's amazing. And then this was the coolest part for me, when certain, like, and we'll talk about several of them, I'm sure, but certain just iconic moments of lifting happening, where it becomes this thing where the nations don't even matter. We're all witnessing somebody just do something incredible, and we're all on our feet. We're all screaming, yelling, "Go, go, go!" Like, I can't remember. I believe it was the Brazilian lifter. I believe she missed her second attempt, then came
48
back and
years old, man.
yes, came back and got on the third, like the longest grind I've seen in my life. And at that point, I remember me, my dad, Pitre, everyone's just on their feet screaming, "Go, go, go!" It didn't matter what the nation was, man. It was. I'm really getting chills thinking about it right now. I'm not exaggerating, man. Like, it was. The best way I can put it, me pictures about it. It made me fall back in love with powerlifting all over. It was a beautiful experience. Just the energy of everyone, seeing people compete at that level. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't care if you're somebody where you have the potential to be a world champion one day, or if you're somebody where you're trying to hit your first 1,000 pound total. There was no way, even just watching it at home, sure, but there was no way you would be at that world, be there in attendance, and it doesn't make you be like, I got to go home and work harder. I got to go push myself that much more. So that's what it did for me, man. It was incredible. It was very humbling being able to, and it was cool too, because I mean, a lot of people straight up said, like, yeah, we didn't know what to expect from y'all, because a lot of the countries have a certain perception of what Americans are going to be like, stuff like that. But it was very humbling to have people from other countries say, like, man, you guys represent your country well, like the way you carry yourselves, the way you're on the platform. They even appreciated simple stuff like us just hanging out with them after the meets and chilling and eating with them. And I was like, brother, why would I not want to do that? Like I'm getting to talk to people from Great Britain, Australia, Brazil, all these different countries over lifting weights, like over the fact that we just enjoy pushing our bodies hard and trying to get stronger. It was incredible. It was truly a life-changing experience for me. And it's one of these things where it made me look back at like everything I did, like my first online client in powerlifting, and when I first started powerlifting, look at everything I've done, all the time you put in work, the times where maybe you're like, man, this is what I want to do, or the times where it's like, man, I know people are cutting corners here and there, but I want to do it the right way. I want to show that it's worth it. And to be at that level, right, to see my lifters at that level, it is worth it, man. And once again, to go back to my first point, that's why all God for just giving me the strength, the perseverance to keep doing things and try to do it the right way to His honor and glory. Because it was awesome, man. Like every time I talk about it or I think about it, I get goosebumps, because it's like, man, that was awesome, and I can't wait to go back again and again and again. It was awesome. I've never, as a coach, and just as someone who, as a lifter, someone who's powerlifting, I've never experienced anything like that ever. It's not even close. It was amazing.
I try to explain this to people all the time, and I'm like always say yes if you got the opportunity to go to a world championships. Junior Worlds is really cool too. It's not quite open worlds though, won't have the same feel, but it's still
Yeah,
international. But there's something about, like, you could go to a powerlifting meet, and if it's domestic within whatever nation you're at, like US has got huge ones and France has got some big ones, and different nations are powerlifting nations. So the vibe and like how many
yeah,
people show up is going to be big. The
yeah.
difference though, it being an international event, it's difficult to explain to people, but like you said, it's like our Olympics every single year. Every nation is there. It's so crazy to see people from all over the world, all these different
Yeah.
nations, and the storylines coming out of it.
Yeah.
And all of them have their own like local heroes that they're cheering for, and you can't help but get involved in it and
Yeah.
meeting people and all the different cultures and backgrounds and everything.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to explain to people. And afterwards, the being like, where's everybody eating at? There's like
Yeah.
usually you find a particular restaurant in town that eventually this gets overrun by powerlifters every single night. Like this is our spot now. Or you're
Yeah.
just chilling in lobbies, whether it's beginning of the day, midday, after at the end of the day, you're just chilling in that lobby.
Yeah.
People tell me like, "Wow, I'm going without like friends and family this year." I'm like, "You will be fine.
Yeah.
You will
Yeah.
people will find you. You will find people. It is
Yeah.
not hard to just kick it, walk up to a table and start kicking it with people, like start
Yeah.
up a conversation and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's something else, man."
You truly feel like you're a part of something bigger and realize that you are part of something bigger at that point. And like I said, my dad, he's kind of like he's similar to you, but my dad just loves sports. I'm talking, it doesn't matter what the sport is. It can be a sport no one's ever heard of. My dad knows about it. My dad just loves sports like that. So for him to say that some of the moments he saw there were some of the coolest things he's ever seen just in sports, period. Like with Jurins, my dad said that was one of the coolest things he's ever seen like live. But it's yeah, it was awesome, man. And yeah, it's one of those things where if you don't have family or friends with you, whatever, it's like if as long as you don't seclude yourself and don't be standoffish, bro, there's so much that wants to talk to you, that's down to talk to you. Like, and that's the thing that's cool, just like meeting people, right? Like some people that maybe you talk to or follow on social media, but it's meeting people that you've never met them or would have not met them otherwise, but you end up having great conversations. You end up seeing each other each day, you end up sitting next to each other because you keep the conversations going throughout the session, stuff like that. It was Yeah, it was awesome. I could do a whole podcast just talking about how awesome this basketball was. Bro. I really could. It was fantastic. And like I said, it also gave me something more to look forward to because it's this thing where for me, just speaking transparently, it's like, okay, I look at like, what all I've done coaching wise, what all my lifters have done as far as okay, nationals and pro series and winning this and winning that and all kind of stuff that's been great. But it was getting to a point where it's like, okay, like I'm always excited to handle my clients no matter what. Cause I'm always excited to see them put the work, to see them put the work on the platform, right? But it's getting to a point with some of these other meets, like even for nationals for this year, I can just transparently say, it's like I'm excited for a lot of my clients to go out there and do their thing on the platform. But if they were to tell me last minute, oh hey, I don't want to do that, I want to do it this other local meet instead, it wouldn't feel that different to me because it's like it doesn't lead to anything more. And at one point that wasn't the case because even when the split first happened, because so much of the talent still stayed here, it meant something. Hey, if you win this weight class, it means something. Or if you do this or that, it means something, even beyond like the pro series. But when the best of the best are all over there at this point, right? And there's more to work towards because it's like, okay, hey, Worlds is checked off. We've done that. What's next? Okay, Sheffield, let's check that off. World Games, let's check that off. And just knowing that, especially when you have stuff like SBD and Pete Spence and what they're doing, that they're always coming up with more stuff to do, like the SBD rugby, bro. That was so much fun. Like
I
that
wanted to
was,
talk to you about that, but yeah, we'll
yeah,
dive in. But yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's. I basically for me, it's like I'm at a point where for me, and of course for my clients, I always let them know, hey, whatever's best for you, that's the decision you make as far as bed. But I know for me, as a coach, as a lifter, where I want to be is where the sport is continuing to elevate and continuing to grow, where there's continuing to come up with new stuff, more challenges, more things to do. Because like I said, it made me so excited. Like, I mean, it's still almost a year away, and all I'm thinking about is like, man, I can't wait for Germany. I can't wait to go back to the Worlds, bro. Like, it was awesome, especially because, like I said, just due to like, our 14 stuff and all that kind of stuff. The fact that I was having like make calls from the audience, like, man, biggest shout out and love to Matt, Gary, and Susie because they told us from the start, hey, we're going to be collaborative. You're going to be a part of everything. Like, you guys are going to make the game plan. We're going to talk about the game plan. Like, we're going to have Hanson, what we got to do. And like, it could have been so easy for them to disregard all that and be like, hey, we're making it. But they were truly collaborative in every sense of the word. And of course, them still making the final call, being the ones back there. But like after every attempt with my guys looking at me like, hey, what's the hand signal? What are we thinking? Talking between attempts. Like I have nothing but positive affirmations and love for them and the entire the U.S. coaching team because it went so well. But with that being said, I don't ever want to experience that again in my life. As far as like not directly being with my people, that sucks, especially like at that level. So yeah, it was awesome though, man. It really was cool. Yeah, I'll ramble if I just keep going. So I'll let you ask whatever and kind of go from there.
I do remember every attempt, Matt Gary look into the crowd and he'd be like, 5, 2, like
Mhm.
you'd be right on the spot. What do you think?
Yeah,
And it is different. even though you're not in the back, it is different being live. Matt Gary always says this, and
Yeah.
it's true. Watching the stream or watching video afterwards, sometimes I'll be commentating there live, and it was totally different afterwards. Where people are like, it wasn't that much of a grinder. I think he had like another 2.5 5. And
Yeah,
sometimes you're like,
yeah,
my man, you weren't there live. It
yeah,
didn't feel like that live. Live, it's
yeah,
like stay
yeah.
there. Like it is different.
That's something else I have to say for sure that I definitely learned firsthand is that one, I actually, even though yes, the IPF is strict, right? They have strict calls like that. I will say this because it's like I think other than the elbow depth rule for bench, that's the one exception. I
Yeah.
actually think the IPF judging is very consistent. It's strict, but it's very consistent because there's a lot of videos where I'm seeing people watch and be like, oh, this should have been good, this blah, blah, blah. But then I'm looking at what it looks like on the live stream, but I'm looking at what I just saw in person. I was like, no, the call they made was perfect. Like that was fair. That was bad. Like even like with Anatoly, I believe like his third squad, a lot of people were saying like, oh no, that should have been Ashton, blah, blah, blah. Ashton was there. I was there. We were just like, no, that was a good squat. But the thing is, when I see the videos that people are posting in the angle, I see why they think it wasn't. I truly do. It really is different. And it's funny because, before going to Worlds, people say it all the time, like, oh, it's different. And you're like, well, how different could it be? What's the point of having the live stream looks that different? But it really is. And I can honestly say, even though their judging is strict, besides the elbow depth to the bench, I think it's very consistent. I think it was way more consistent than what USAPL national calls were last year. Last year, the calls were all over the place. And it's like, and I'm very big on, if I want to say, I think they're being a little bit lenient on the calls, okay, or I think they're being overly strict on the calls, okay, but at least I need to know what the standard is for the day. And I can't do that if it's constantly changing attempt from attempt. And I think the IPF honestly did really well with that in terms of the judging and the consistency. I was actually very impressed with that. Because, of course, no matter what, there might always be one or two calls and you're like, I don't know if I agree with that, disagree with that. And then, of course, the jury overturning a lot of things. I'm not a big fan of that in general. I don't think most people are, especially if it's the point where it's like, okay, if we get one red, you're just going to take it away. It's almost like, what's the point of having the refs? But as a collective whole, I really do feel like it overall was consistent. And you bringing up the live stream made me think, like, it doesn't look that way, though. It may not. I can see why people have the complaints that they do. But having actually gone and been there, me and Peter talked about this even after the meeting. We're like, no, this is good. This is consistent. It's just crazy how it does look different because angles just can't do it justice when you're seeing the full thing in 3D. You know what I mean? So yeah.
It is. Yeah, 100% agree. And I also like I don't think anyone likes an overly active jury.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sometimes they were more active than others. It
Yeah.
wasn't egregious like some other periods in time. And there's always look at in a week and a half, the amount of sessions and attempts and calls, you're gonna have some controversial calls that because some lifts
Absolutely.
are on the line. Some lifts
Absolutely.
are on the line, and you're like, I'm not sure. It could go either way. And guess what? Whatever way that one goes, someone's going to be upset. If you give it to the lifter, the opposing nation will be like, you fucking kidding me? You let that pass?
Yeah.
And if you take it away from the lifter, that nation will be like, you took it away from us? Like,
Yeah.
it's never going to be great.
Yeah.
With controversial, that's sports. That's all sports,
You just
though.
got to adapt to it. It's like Megan, for example. She got her opening squat. They didn't give her a second, and then her third. Me looking at it and being there in person, the videos, her third to me looked the same or better than her first, but they didn't give it to her. And we could have sat there and complained and been like, and of course, in the moment you're emotionally, oh, that sucks. It's not fair. It's not right. Blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what are you going to do about it? You're going to keep whining about it for a whole year. You're going to go back to the drawing board, get the tech on point, make yourself undeniable, and come back better. That's it's sports. That's you're not always going to get the calls that you want. It just is what it is. And I think it's one thing if someone just seems blatantly raw, but then that's what the jury actually is for, right? For moments like that. So it is what it is. But as a whole, yeah. I mean, like you said, there's going to be controversial calls. You're not going to be happy with every call. It's just not going to happen. But I think as a collective whole, it was pretty on point.
We can go. Let's talk about some of your athletes at Worlds. So yeah, Megan showed some heart though, because when things aren't going your
Mm-hmm.
way, you got to keep it moving. You got to.
Yeah,
The day isn't over, and that's something that easier to do at a local level. This is another thing. Talk about Worlds and trying to explain to people it is going to feel different. And people are like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, trust me. When
mm-hmm.
you show up to an event like that you know is international, and they have the flags at the beginning and the whole nine, and all that it means to have Team USA, and you're representing more than just yourself now. And people all over the world are watching, knowing you're representing your nation, and people from your nation are watching, and all the expectations. that all the previous podcasts and everyone's talking about, and you put it upon yourself, your friends, your family, and you walk into that meet now, have squats not go your way, in some calls you might thought should have been yours. Now keep it together. Now
Yeah,
just be like, I turn off and I'm like a robot, bro.
yeah,
Easy to do when you're doing local meet, whatever. Some people don't fully understand the maturity and poise it takes to be in that particular situation. And I don't think even articulating like we're trying to right now, they will get it. But when you're
yeah,
there on the day and the crowd is there and everything's going on and the live stream and all that, and you know you're in that position and a couple
yeah,
calls don't go your way, it's a lot harder to not be
yeah,
emotional and not and just stay positive and be like,
yeah,
well, maybe I'm not in gold no more. Well, maybe I won't be in podium anymore and keep
yeah,
going. It
yeah,
shows heart. It shows character. That was character
yeah.
building, but I'll let
Oh,
you tell it because you were there with Megan in the back.
I was so proud of her because, like I said, after the squats, going back there to check up on her, stuff like that. And obviously, you can tell like, when she's upset, she's disappointed. But the fact that she still has this composure of like, I just got to keep doing what I got to do. The day's not over because it wasn't right. Like, she set herself up well on the bench despite missing a third, and on the deadlift, had she gotten that third pull, would have still locked herself up as the top three, which was our goal. But I was very proud of her because the one thing that I told all of them, her, Bob, Ashton, Pitre, say, hey, regardless of how it goes, regardless of what pressure expectations people may be putting on you, what expectations you put on yourself, I am proud of all of you because you made it this far. Like people have been saying for so long, like, oh, they can say they're say PL because they can get saved, blah, blah, blah. But when they come over, they see it's different. So the fact that we even got here, our first go around, going to PLA Nats, I was already proud. But yeah, no, she showed a lot of heart, stayed very composed. And I was proud of her because I feel like in moments like that, when the meet's done, what some people do is they suppress everything and they don't let themselves feel what they need to, or they let themselves drown in their emotions and then take away from the rest of the week. I think Megan did a very good job of doing, even what Susie was trying to do, where it's like, hey, everything you're feeling is valid. Feeling proud of yourself for being here and pushing through is valid. Feeling upset for not feeling like you did as well as what you should have is valid. And I feel like she let herself do everything she needed to, process that she needed to. But guess what? She was still there all the rest of the day, supporting her teammates, supporting them at the sessions, still, was out with her husband, having a good time, eating and doing stuff like that. She didn't let it take away from the entire week. And of course, it's this thing where, like, you're always thinking about, oh, what ifs, but you can't dwell on that, right? And then, like I said, for Megan, man, like being a mother of multiple kids. And
Five kids, man.
5 kids. Here's the thing. I don't think people understand this either, too. Like, because I mean, like to your point about, oh, and local meet can turn it on. Man, I know people local meets where the moment they miss the third squat or miss a lift, they want to they're so self-defeated. So it's like, imagine feeling that way, but with the states of worlds, right? And maybe you can start to get an idea of what Megan was going through. But I have clients who don't have kids, who aren't married, who don't have a job, maybe they're just in school, whatever. We're getting them to be on top of their nutrition and their training sometimes can be such a hassle. This woman has every reason, every excuse, forget to skip training, to not even be powerlifting and to do what she's done and make it to that world level. It is inspiring to me. I know it's inspiring to a lot of my clients, whether male or female. And the fact is, now that she's been there, has had a taste and knows what to expect, I can promise you she's becoming different. And right now she's having to deal with a lot of stuff right now with some health issues going on with one of her children. I won't get too much into that. Having to deal with that. And guess what? Just yesterday in the gym, still in the gym doing what she needs to do. So I'm incredibly proud of Megan. I'm incredibly proud of her composure, her tenacity to keep going. And I'm excited because I know what she's capable of. And it's kind of like, hey, sometimes, I tell you all the time, hey, sometimes life punched you in the face. You got to get up and swing back. So I know that's what she's going to be doing this entire next year, going to PLA Nats and then trying to secure that world spots again. But very proud of her, very proud of her. And the best part is she felt strong. So I was really happy about that. Like the cut went well at PLA Nats. And even then, people say, okay, but what about with the travel? Cut still went well.
That's good.
Yeah,
I
she
was going to
felt,
ask about that because there are tangibles that you have to take
yes.
account for.
Yes. Yeah, no, it went well, man. We planned it all out. The good thing is, we've had Wasser go to Worlds before and I do his nutrition. So I kind of already know what to do to get someone ready for a gut cut and what foods to have and what to do while they're traveling. So it went very well. And she felt strong on the day. It was just one of those things where, like, that happened with the squat. You got to try to cover some ground with different stuff. But yeah, Megan did great as a whole. And I'm very proud of her.
I want to talk about the 52s for a second because we're in here,
Yeah.
but talking about the cutting, it is weird because like traveling does weird things to your body when you think it's noon, but it's freaking 6 o'clock at night. And then
Yeah.
you think it's like you should be asleep and you can't because for you it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but no, now it's bedtime. So, and then you're the jet lag, the flying, the whole nine. And
And the
Perk was
sun,
talking
bro.
about
The sun didn't go down till like 11 p.m. and then would
it was
raise and
dude,
then would come up at 3 a.m., bro. That was crazy.
me
Yeah.
and Caffrey went for a walk and there was kids playing and it was daylight, like literally children in the park playing. Me and him were just walking or whatever, shooting the shit. And I'm like, holy dude, it's fucking 10 p.m. And he's like, what? There's children on
Yeah.
swings and like it's broad daylight. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I think we should go back to like we gotta get start winding down. Like it
Yeah.
was so weird. And Perk was talking about, and this is Perk. He's like he lost body weight. He's not sure why, like a decent amount that
Yeah.
affected some of his lifts. Now, obviously, he's still one best lifter because
Yeah.
he can. But if
Yeah.
you were in a super tight battle, traveling does weird things to you, time zone
Yeah.
changes and all the rest of it. Sometimes you're like, yeah, I don't know why, but I'm just not sleeping like I should. Or,
Yeah.
well, that's an easy one, but I don't know why, but my stomach isn't happy with me. Sometimes when you're at home, if your sleep is off, your things like appetite or just how you're digesting food becomes off as well. And these are things where like you do your best to mitigate the impact as much as possible. And if you've done it a bunch of times previous, it helps. But sometimes that day comes and you're like, damn it. And it's not going to be a great day. And that's when you're going to get tested, where it's like, all right, yes, this is life. This is going to happen to you. It might be happening to the other guy or girl you're going against. You don't know.
Yeah.
Very rarely are you 100% on these days. Let's play with what we got and see what happens because you might not need to be 100% to win. And it doesn't have to be Perk level talent to win, not being 100%.
Yeah.
There are stories all throughout sports and powerlifting where multiple people they come in and one guy's like, man, I am not good right now. I almost pulled out. And then they didn't realize the other 3 or 4 top dogs you're going against also were in the same situation. Had you pulled out or whatever, you got in your own head, you would have done it to yourself. You're putting everyone else at 100% and think you're the only one in the room who's not. Relax. And the only experience will teach us, but relax. Let's see what happens. Because
Yeah.
maybe everyone else is dealing with some shit, but they're just going to rise above.
Yeah.
Time to check it. Time to have a gut check moment. It's easier said than done.
Yeah,
It's,
I don't think
you know?
I don't think anyone, like, not in the sense that there aren't variables you have to account for, and if you account for those variables, you're probably in a better spot than if you don't. But after what Carlos did, bro, I don't know if anyone can ever really complain about travel circumstances ever again. I'm not gonna lie. I just after I remember telling him, I was like, brother, the main things you taught me is that travel doesn't matter, but hydration does. I told him that's
Dude,
because bad.
dude, Carlos literally plane landed and he's coming from the Western hemisphere. He's coming like he's on our side of the world. He crossed the ocean, multiple time zones, plane landed day of. And then I remember like a day before landing and being like, oh, am I going to get there in time? What time am I going to sleep at? My man landed and shuttled 2.5 hours to the venue. So even then he's looking at his clock. Like people wake up at the venue and they're like, well, I mean, we got to make sure we get there in time for the weigh-ins. We got to make sure this dude, his plane's landing and he's looking at his watch, being like, will I get there for the weigh-ins in time? Shuttled 2.5 hours. He's bigger than 93. He doesn't walk around at 93. And he's cutting weight. I seen him. I was at the venue and people like, Carlos isn't here yet. And I like earlier that morning, I'm like he's not at the venue yet. And they're like, no, my friend. He's not in Lithuania yet. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I know it's from Guyane. It's like, dude, that is the other side of the world. How does this work? And I was at the venue outside talking to people, and he was being led in by his team. And he looked like on death's door because he's cutting weight. And I looked at my watch like, he has like 30 minutes to turn this around. He made weight like a minute and a half left.
Yeah, like a couple minutes or something like that. Yeah.
Crazy. Because he missed, kept spitting, made it, looked at his watch, and it's like, guess what, kid? You got like 30 minutes to get hydrated. And by the way, you're going for a world record in squats.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it's I can't believe it, man. The
Yeah.
gumption on this guy, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
That it's a different level of mentality when you're able to do something like that. Because physically he's obviously not putting himself in an advantageous position. And obviously we know that that stuff does matter and play a role. But the reason why I say you can't complain about it anymore is that my man mentally willed himself through those squats regardless and through those circumstances. It was crazy. And I won't get to it, Hex. I know you want to talk about the 52s, but I actually because I listened to the podcast with you in Austin. I actually have I'm pretty sure I know why he lost weight because fun fact, same sort of thing happened to Bob. Same thing happened to me. Like, dude, when I got back, I was like 7-8 pounds lighter, and I was eating good over there, man. Yeah. But I have a pretty good idea as to why, though. But we can talk about that when we ever get to Bob and stuff like that. But yeah, no, what Carlos did was the same, man. Like, it's one of those things where it's like I will never, anytime somebody look, account for your variables, try to get where you need to get on time as far as the traveling, do all that. But if you don't, and you're like, well, if I would have just, I don't care. I don't care.
Fair.
Carlos did it. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
And it did catch by deadlifts. It definitely did catch up to him. Like he pulled when he came out and kept grabbing his hammy. When he came out for his third, after he grabbed his hamstring on his second, I'm like, dog, you like if that hammy gets torn right off, we're not even talking. I don't know if we see you again at 100%. Like this isn't worth it. He ended up being okay, and he let go of the bar before, like once he felt some weird pulling. But that's where, like with travel and whatnot, rehydration may not totally hit the same like it would back home. A lot of stuff, you know.
Well, also, I mean, he only had so much time. Like he only had so much time. Like if you think about it, if you weigh in right when it starts, you have all of weigh-ins to rehydrate. You have to do all of squat, through all of bench. My guy only had 30 minutes before squat even started. And then let's be real, when you're lifting weights and the adrenaline's going, it's harder to probably keep water and all that kind of stuff down in the first place. Like when you got everything going. So that's why I say, hey, travel may not, I won't let you complain about travel, but you can definitely complain about hydration because that was crazy.
And he also, when he was on a plane, I was like he had no sleep. He's like, dude, I was sitting up the entire time. He's like, I tried. He's like, I might have nodded off, took small 20-minute naps here and there, but you're on a plane that's moving. You're surrounded by people and you're sitting up the entire time. Like he was dehydrated, no sleep. I mean, it was crazy. God bless. But yeah, what a story. What a character Carlos is in the 93s. And his emergence, I remember in Malta after Group B was done, and it was like, okay, well, Carlos is going to Sheffield due to the regional invite. And it's weird how these regional invites get the regional invite, and it's like, well, you got through there because you're part of a region, and it's nice to get representation throughout the world, but people aren't looking your way, and they just level up. And Carlos has leveled up, and he told me in the conclusion of Group B at Malta World Championships, he was like, I am not just a regional, and you guys are all going to know soon enough. I'm going to make a statement. And I'm like, all right, we'll see. I like the gumption. I like the way he carries himself. My God, this dude? He's such a character. It's like you made him up. And when you talk about him, the way he carries himself, like Pitre said, I never met nobody that carries himself like he does. He's just so different.
No, meeting Carlos was such a pleasure, man. Got to meet him, talk with them, eat with them, hang out, chill, just have a good time. But no, Carlos is a character is the best way to put it, man. Like people are like, so what's Carlos like? I was like, think about like the most like confident comic book or cartoon or anime character you can think of who like just believes his capabilities no matter what and likes to bust jokes and stuff like that. I said, that's Carlos. Like that's the best description I can give you. Like he's one of those dudes where you just have to meet him to really know what it's like. But yeah, Carlos is a funny dude. I remember we having a conversation about bench press because we were like, oh, things can do for his bench because the dude only benches twice a week, which is crazy at that level of powerlifting. And we were like, well, bro, if you bench like even 3 times, that'd probably help. But I remember him being like, listen to me. He's like, it's called SBD. If the squat and deadlift are going up the way they need to, I don't have to worry about the B. And I'm just like, that's great. That's great. Why would you? I was like,
yeah, we talks, by the way.
I was like, but if you get the B up, so he said, no, you're not listening. Listen, Marcellus. The B can do what it needs to do. So long as the S and the D are where they need to be, then the SBD is fine. I just
you do an amazing Carlos impression, by the way. I love it. He goes, no, you're not listening. You're not listening. It is totally the way he talks. Like, no, the B's gonna do what it's gonna do. It's like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah,
But he's like, nah, the B is what it is. What are you playing? It's like, all right,
yeah,
man. I
yeah.
don't
He
know.
said the B is the break between the S and the D. That's it.
B is for break.
Yeah,
B is for
yes,
break.
dude. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
It's
Yes, man.
God.
So, but I love Carlos, man. That was one of many awesome people I got to meet. And that was awesome.
He still like randomly sends me like motivational videos and quotes
Yeah,
in my Instagram, my personal account. And I'm
yeah,
like, yeah, I'm glad I met him. I'm glad he's around and I'm glad he's part of the 93s.
yeah.
So talking about the 52s, obviously Evie did what Evie does. Uh, Megan Lee Smith, a 1-2 punch from New Zealand. Megan Lee Smith has leveled up like crazy.
Yeah,
Plun Decker's doing phenomenal. The 52s are so crazy stacked.
yeah,
And Noemi Aliber, two-time world champ previously, so far ahead. 2022, we were all like, well, there's Noemi, a gap, and then the rest of the field. And now 2024, she's off podium. These ladies are hitting, more than she's ever hit.
yeah.
And it, powerlifting is so merciless. Sorry. And I don't know. What's your impression of the 52s? It might shake up again because while Evie's hitting the 52 kilo class and still reasonably, she said it's reasonably comfortable for her and she'll probably do another round in Sheffield. It's not going to be forever. We know this.
Sure, sure.
At some point, and her total's getting big enough, she might end up close to 500 as a 52 and then adios, I'm out of here. I'm going 57. I might as well. So it's going to shake up again within a year's time. But what's your impression of the 52s, the landscape of the 52s, and how do you take this? Like the changing of the guard, Evie took it over, but now it's to the point where Noemi's getting pushed further and further back. I'm not saying she can't come back for anyone
Sure,
listening, but
sure.
but it is different now, huh?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, Evie, seeing her in person, like you already noticed it, but seeing her in person, it's so unassuming, man. Like I would never just look at her and be like, "Oh, she's throwing up this and that." It was like she's obviously set herself very far away from the pack. But to your point, if she does hit 500 and moves up or whatever, it's going to be interesting because to me, it's almost kind of similar to the men's 83s in a sense now
Yes.
too, where it's like the numbers that used to be the standard will maybe get you top five now, right? Maybe in some cases top eight, top 10, depending on where you're at. And I definitely think there's a lot of factors that go into for both classes. But the 52 specifically, I think it's the fact that I think more and more women are simply kind of finding where they can kind of sit comfortably or and while still managing to cut down and perform well. That's what it is for Megan, right? She doesn't walk around right at the weight. I also feel like there's something to um, I almost like critical point lifters, right? There's something to having like an EV or even seeing a Jurins do what they do, where I think it kind of just makes people realize, okay, I'm capable of more than what I've been shown so far, right? And we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to like 83 talk, but I think a part of it is one, we already know programming is getting better every year. Like the information and content's available, people is out there all the time. And when you take someone where they already have the good work ethic and they're already putting in the work, but maybe they just don't have quite the right adjustments of volume or intensity to kind of make themselves pop off, but then they watch the one video, they watch something that just like, I haven't tried that, let me try that, and then it clicks. It's not like they suddenly went from weak to being strong. You've been strong. You've been building strength. You've been getting bigger and stronger, but you just haven't had the right combo to make your top end show up consistently the way you need to. You've probably seen like glimpses here and there in training where, man, that block went really good, but I don't know why. And then you kind of find what consistencies you need in your programming to keep you that way. I think that's part of it. I also think part of it too is just, the more people are getting into powerlifting every year, right? Even though we're still a small niche sport, it's growing every year. So you're getting more people with different genetics, certain genetic predispositions where they're just going to be stronger. They're coming with a higher baseline to be able to catch to a certain point quicker. But I also really do think that even though she set herself away from the pack, I think Evie doing what she did is causing a lot of these other 52s to be like, okay, if she can do that, why can't I be capable of 5-10 kilos more than my best? You know what I mean? I think that plays a large role with it. And I think in terms of how close it's going to be, I mean, let's look at it this way, man. Like we can use Megan as an example. Megan hits all her lifts on that day. She's in the top 3. She's chilling there, right? But you miss one lift and it can change everything. And I think that's what makes the 52 so interesting in that aspect is that even if you are 5-10 kilos weaker than somebody, if they miss 1 or 2 lifts, you're right there, right? It's almost like even though Evie's so far ahead, the rest of them are so close together that it's really hard to say for sure how it's going to go. You can say whatever, like, oh, well, on paper, this person's this strong, that's strong, this strong, but they're not so far away from each other from, like, second through fourth or fifth to where they can even really afford to miss one lift. Maybe you can miss 2.5 on bench, right? Maybe something like that. But 5, 7, it starts to get dicey at that point, right? So I really think that there's factors to go into in terms of, like, programming, and then just, greater gene pool. Now we're getting into it. But I think a lot of people are just refining and learning more stuff. And man, this is what I tell people all the time. Like, I tell clients all the time, I said, listen, you first come to me as a client, we're gonna hit some PRs in our first year together. We're gonna like make some really good progress. But I said, but it's always gonna be after that first year together we start to see things take off. Because you need consistency and time and data to really see what works with somebody. And what happens with a lot of people when they're at that certain level is they get to a certain level of strength, but maybe what they always did historically stops working. So they start making these drastic changes, and they keep trying to find what works instead of, well, if you make smaller, steadier changes, small dose adjustments, then you kind of find what works, right? And I think a lot of these ladies, that's what's happening. They've been kind of playing around with this, but now they're kind of starting to really find what works. And now we're seeing, oh man, where did this explosion come from? Well, because they've been putting in the work, but now they're doing the right things to get that presentation that they need, right? I think that's a lot of what's happening with them, and it makes it very interesting because I have no idea what the landscape's going to look like. I really don't.
It's interesting you say it because I had Joe Borenstein and his coach on the last podcast, and his coach, who's like literally going to school for brain surgery,
Yeah,
neuroscience, and like he's brilliant. And he was saying one of the biggest things with powerlifting, I mean, if you bounce from coach to coach too often, and we see people do that because they need right away instant progress, and it's like it's not going to work like that. And he's coming from a science-based approach because literally this is what he's going, this is how he
yep,
approaches school and everything. So
yep,
there's so many variables that you need to try to control all the variables and just change one thing so
yep,
that that is what it is.
yep,
Otherwise, if you do wholesale changes and start changing too many variables at once, you honestly don't know which variable it was. You
exactly.
honestly don't know what's working, not for real.
Yep,
So now you're flying blind moving forward. So when you hit a new plateau, you made assumptions based off of this training, that methodology, and when you try to
yes.
when you hit another plateau and try to do other changes, like you actually don't know
You
now.
don't know
You're
what to
totally
tweak.
guesswork. You from the
Yes.
beginning, if
Yep,
you would have been like, okay, I got data points, let me control all variables, just change this. Didn't work.
yep,
Let me put that variable back, change one of
yeah,
the other variables. And it takes time. And that's what he
yes,
said is
yeah,
he approaches it from a scientific base because that's what he's going to school for. And he's like, this is what we have to do.
yeah,
And he's like, that's the only way you're going to actually collect the data points and change one at a time and take time. But I think powerlifters in this day and age, when you're younger or whatever, you have this instant gratification on social media, instant
yeah,
everything. And you're like, I got to be number one or in the top 3 very quickly.
yeah,
And they jump ship from coaches sometimes where a coach is like, and if they hit it with a different coach, the old coach might be like, my friend, maybe I could have got you there, maybe I couldn't, but I didn't really get a shot at it. You
exactly,
didn't really give me a shot. And maybe
exactly.
you landed on that lily pad with your new coach and you got lucky because he just banged off, hey, try this, and it started working. But he doesn't know for sure either. Like you need
Yeah.
data and time.
Yeah, I tell people, listen, the days of programming where if you're doing this thing where like I was doing a 5x5 this week, now a 3x3 this week, or where you're block 2 in the same training cycle stretches for block 1, you don't need that. Like you need consistency because consistency leads to repeatability. So it's like at this point, like I said, for my clients, peaking and tapering them is easy because I know, hey, every 4th week of their block, you feel this strong. So we can build into meets that way. Make sure the meet lands on that 4th week of the block because we have consistency block to block and week to week. Like the training weeks are looking the same, or maybe the intensity is just going up from week 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Maybe the next block, maybe we're doing top triples that first block. Now maybe we're doing top doubles. But guess what? Your back down volume, your accessories, all that staying consistent. Like we undulate the smallest things that's needed to help you feel strong. But I tell people, listen, like I tell people, like the whole idea of even an off season, in season for powerlifting doesn't look the same as other sports. I was like, what gets you strong in the off season keeps you strong going into prep. The only difference for my guys between an off season and then like an in season is maybe we're doing like more singles closer to the meet if they need that, right? But I have some clients where we'll be running triples and doubles until like a block out, then we'll shift to singles. Why? Because they get a response from that. That's what gets them strong. Maybe we pull back on some of the harder accessories a little bit closer to me, or maybe we taper them off the week going into it. But it's like when you find what gets someone strong and they're getting strong, and I tell people all the time, like, okay, so in your off season, you were hitting PRs back to back to back. It was going great. Well, why now 12 weeks out did you suddenly decide to cut your volume in half and just push it? Like, why would you do that? Why would you not keep doing the same thing that was getting you strong and just build that in, right? So people have to understand that. And then to your point about the younger lifters, like I tell them this all the time. I think it's very fun. If you look at any other sport, football, basketball, track, whatever, the people that are at the top of their sports, most of them have been doing their sports since they were a child. They have put years and years into it to get to that top level. You got these kids who see a powerlifter on social media, they're like 18 and they think they should be the next world champion in 2, 3 years. Like, brother, you need to put in at least 5 years just to even have an idea of where you might be potential wise. You know what I mean? Like if you look at most of the top lifters right now, they haven't been lifting for just 1 or 2 years. They even the ones, even someone like Bobb, or maybe hasn't been powerlifting as long relative to some of these other guys, has been weight training for years at this point. You know what I mean? And I don't think they understand that. That look, take the genetics and the variable stuff aside. You have to put enough time into this to even have an idea of where you want to be. You want to be world champion during the time period where most people are just trying to figure out how strong can I even potentially be. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, you need more than 2 or 3 years to determine that, and you need to give a coach more than 2 or 3 blocks to make you feel good. Like you need time and data to test things out and see where things are at. I can only imagine where like, Ashton, Pitre, Bobb, Jamar, Chris Inham, where they would have been if we would have only gone based off the results we got in our first 1 or 2 blocks, especially for a lot of them, the first 2 or 3 blocks was, hey, let's just get you healthy first, right? You have some people where they're so, so excited, anxious to make progress, they can come to you hurt and broken. And like, I just want to get stronger. It's like, well, brother, if we get you stronger with this broken state you're in, it's not going to last very long. You know what I mean? Like people have to know how to approach things very systematically. You have to have these long-term goals because otherwise you're going to burn yourself out either physically or mentally. And you just have to have realistic expectations. And this is why I think it's so important for people to learn to, it's cliche, oh, enjoy the process, but you got to love training, man. I was talking about this on my Instagram story a couple of weeks ago where I was like, a lot of y'all who are experiencing burnout, you're not experiencing burnout, you don't like powerlifting. You got into it because you see all your friends decided to get into it, and or maybe you were just now getting into fitness, and instead of letting yourself enjoy your fitness passion, it's like, oh, well, all my friends are powerlifting, so I'm going to go power lift. Or maybe you have this expectation because someone told you, bro, you could be great, and now you're trying to chase after that expectation. But it's like, dude, you don't even like what you're doing. Because I'm sorry, there's no reason you should be 1 or 2 years into this and then experiencing burnout. If you've been doing it for 5, 8, 10 years, and it's like, you know what, I've done this for a long time, it's kind of ran its course, I mentioned other things, valid, completely valid. But I tell a lot of people, some of you just don't like to work hard. You want everything to be easy. When it's like, brother, you're lifting weights. You are pushing your body hard. It's not always going to feel good. In fact, most of the time it's not. I'm not saying you should feel shattered or broken, but you're going to experience fatigue. You're going to have a lot of sessions that don't feel good. Most of your sessions are kind of building sessions to make one session feel great. That session is going to feel good, except that other ones aren't going to feel as good. And it's like, even when you account for all of that, some of you, it's like, hey, you love powerlifting when it's going well. You don't like it when it's not going the way you want. But I just tell a lot of y'all, you just don't like powerlifting. You don't enjoy it. You don't enjoy the training. You don't enjoy putting the work in. You don't enjoy having to be in control of your variables. You like the gratification of hitting the PR and stuff like that, but you don't actually like putting the work in that leads up to it. You don't like what makes the PRs valuable to people like myself, where, listen, dude, if I stop powerlifting today, I'm still working out. I love lifting. I love training. I love getting stronger, getting bigger. That's just what it is. If you don't have that, you're not going to last very long in this. You're not, because the fact is, even the best of the best, man, they have down periods. They have periods where they can even have a good meet and still not be satisfied because, man, my training was this, that, and the third. Imagine if those people would quit over that. You know what I mean? But they keep sticking with it. Why? Because they love the challenge of pushing themselves, of getting better. They like getting bigger. They like getting stronger. And a lot of these kids that they get on social media or whatever, that's why I'm so grateful that I got into it before the time of social media. I wasn't even on social media when I first started powerlifting, because you learn to just really see if you like what you like for you, right? There's nothing wrong. I'm very grateful for social media. It's causing people to broaden their horizons. A lot of people wouldn't have even come across powerlifting if not for it, right? But it can't be the reason you stay. You got to like it for you. It just doesn't make sense. Because like, even though yes, there's more money coming to powerlifting now with Sheffield and money at Worlds. I'm sorry, 99% of us, unless you're a coach or doing something like that, you're not making money off this. So to spend that much time and effort and energy on something you don't like is crazy. Like, it doesn't matter if all your friends are doing it or not doing it. Do you like it? Do you enjoy this? If not, stop. Like, I'm not saying to stop working out, but like maybe go develop a love just for fitness before you try to hyper specialize in something like powerlifting. So
I think you might be onto something here, man. It's true that, I mean, Hamza at 18 just retired, who I don't know who retires at 18, but
Yeah.
he retired. And the hype on him was phenomenal, but he was doing weights. I remember when he won, sub juniors. Now, how often do we put a lot of attention on a sub junior winning sub junior worlds? But the reason why he got the attention, his total as a sub junior, like 17, would have placed him in the top 5 in the open or something to that effect, and would have 5 years earlier won him the open world championship. Like LS McLean, when he was winning in Calgary 2018, he would have won shit like that. If not one, he would have been right up in there around there.
Yeah.
I don't remember the numbers exactly, but it was phenomenal. And he was 17. The hype on him, everything, and it was warranted due to the numbers. This wasn't just potential. He was, oh my God, doing it at 17. 18 years old, he announces, you know what, I'm stepping away from powerlifting and retiring. And it's like, oh my gosh. And to your point, I haven't competed since 2019. Dog, I squat 4 days a week or yeah, 4 days a week and bench. Like, I love lifting weights. Like, I love lifting weights. Now, I'm not going to dedicate it to the point where I'm going to go into meets and whatnot anymore because I got all this other stuff going on in my life. So it'll take priority. But I will never stop lifting. Never. And to your
Yeah.
point, when you're like, how are you 2 years in the game, 19, 18, and burnt out? At
Yeah.
18, 19, burnt out? How are you
Yeah.
burnt? How do you use the term burnt out when you're 19? How
Yeah.
did that happen? How did
Yeah.
the 19 burnt out? The world is your oyster. You're,
Yeah.
dog, I'm in my 40s
Yeah.
and still smashing weights. Like, I've seen everything in life, I feel like 100 times over, but there's a million other things I got to still see. But you understand, like, how many different worlds, how many different sessions, how many different everything. And I still am like, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm show up and like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. This is amazing.
Yeah.
How are you not experienced any of this yet? You're
Yeah.
just scratching the surface on life, period. And you're like, wow, I feel burnt out. I feel like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
I
get
don't
if
know.
so and I get it if it's like, hey, I've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, but I've been injured the whole time, been hurt the whole time. Because that does happen. Unfortunately, some people maybe shouldn't be coaching or shouldn't be doing what they do. They're like, maybe your friend like, oh man, let me coach you. They run you into the ground. And now that's what your perception of powerlifting is, right? I get that. And I think it's very unfortunate. Which is a big part of what motivates me to continuously still put out content is like, I want people to be able to come into the sport, have access to good content, good training, good nutrition, and be able to see if they actually enjoy it and not assume that, oh, well, if I do this, I'm going to be hurt all the time, right? But excluding that type of exception, man, it doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. It's just like, you haven't done anything. How can you be burnt out? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. And like I said, I think sometimes it is a pressure thing. I think sometimes people allow the expectations of others to kind of rule how they move. And I'm just like, oh, you got to do this for you. Like at the end of the day, you have to do this for you. And that's something I tell my clients as well too, where I'm just like, look, I have two, like, with all my coaching and systems, it comes down, it can boil down to two simple rules. The first one is that, treat each client like the one you have, meaning whatever your client needs from a programming perspective, a technique perspective, how you talk to them, adjusting our lifestyles, you do that based upon them, right? I don't care if what I'm doing with the client looks similar to what I'm doing with 20 others. I don't care what I'm doing with that client. They're the only one I'm doing it with. What I care about is, does this work for this client, and can I explain why? And the second rule of thumb is, I'm happy my clients are happy. I tell my clients all the time, it is not my job to tell you what your goals are. It is my job to help you be objective with your goals. It's my job to help you maybe choose if you're stuck between option A and B, lay out the pros and cons. But at the end of the day, it's, what are your goals? What do you want to do? Because you can't do this because coach wants me to do this. You can't do this because, oh, my friends expect this of me. Like, you have to want this because it's your money, it's your time, it's your effort, it's your energy, and I'm going to match whatever you bring me, right? So if you're having this expectation of like, oh, well, if I don't do this, coach will be disappointed in me. No, coach is going to be disappointed if you're not honest with where you're at and what you want to do. Because I've had some clients where it's like, hey, man, you know what? You don't seem like you really want to compete right now. It's like, you don't have to. Let's take a year off and let's just build. Let's just build. That way you can be a little more flexible with your training. And oftentimes we've done that. And then they come in the next 2-3 years on fire because they've had time to just heal, recover, build. It can be a lot if you're doing 2-3 meets every year, back to back to back. That's why I tell most of my clients, I try to recommend, hey, unless you have to because of nationals or check or something like that, try to keep it to 2 meets a year because you start doing a lot and it's a lot of mental dedication. But I think that's one thing too. It's just the pacing of it, especially with these younger lifters. Yeah, man, I was going to talk to a kid maybe like a month or so at the gym, and it's like, oh, how long have you been powerlifting? Like, I've been doing like my first year. It's like, okay, cool. So you about to like do like first? It was like, oh no, man, I'm about to do like my fifth meet. Like, what? Dude was doing a meet like every couple of months and stuff like this. Like, all right, I'm just trying to get better. I'm like, dude, that's not how you do it. That's not how you go about it. And I think that's the problem. I think a lot of people might actually like powerlifting if they approach it the right way, but unfortunately, a lot of them don't approach it the right way. And then some of them are approaching it the right way, but they won't be honest with themselves with the fact that they don't actually enjoy it. So they're doing it for some type of purely external motivator, which there's nothing wrong with external motivators, but there has to be something intrinsic that keeps you in it, or you are going to experience burnout. Because I mean, who it's kind of like the way I describe it. It's like, look, man, if I like a show, right? If I really like a show, is it cool if I have friends who like it too, where I can talk to them about it? Absolutely. But guess what? If none of my friends like it, if I like it, I don't care. I'm gonna watch it and enjoy it, right? Now imagine trying to watch a show that you hate. It's boring, it's dull, it makes you upset. But oh, all my friends are watching it. Let me get through 40 minutes of this episode. No, Dolly, of course you're gonna burn out. Of course you're gonna hate it. Next thing you know, it's like, I hate watching TV, I hate live stream, because you've been trying to force yourself to watch something you don't even enjoy for no other reason than, oh, well, everyone else said the show's really good, or all my friends keep talking about it. But dog, if you don't like it, you don't like it. Stop. Like it's like no one has a gun to your head being like, you're on a power lift.
Like you're in a group chat and they all like Real Housewives or Gilmore Girls or some
I'm
shit.
saying, man,
Do I have to watch these shows just to be in a conversation? Yeah, that'd be him.
yeah,
That's a good analogy. It's like, look,
yeah,
man, I don't give a shit who's watching Breaking Bad. I'm gonna watch Breaking Bad, whatever.
yeah,
Insert.
yeah,
It's a good analogy. This is for you. Do what's for you, and if you don't get by, it's going to be hell to get through the first season, let alone
yeah,
season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
yes,
because that's
yes,
only when you're going to actually start getting good.
yeah.
It's season
Yeah,
6.
I feel like everything's not for everyone, and that's okay. I feel like we live in a time and age where there's so much groupthink and so much like collective thoughts with social media, where people feel like, oh, well, this is the end thing right now, this and that's. Like, yeah, that's okay. And look, I'm glad you were exposed to it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. Like, I'm all about giving something a chance. I don't like when people say, oh, I don't think I'm gonna like it if you never even tried it, right?
Mm.
But if you tried it, you don't like it, you're not gonna go to jail, bro. Keep it moving.
Yeah,
Just that's
keep
it.
moving.
That's it. So yeah, I think, like I said, I think it doesn't have to be, you don't have to necessarily like every aspect of powerlifting. There has to be something about powerlifting you like, whether it's the relative me versus me, just getting better each time, whether it's you like throwing yourself in head-to-head competitions, whether it's just like the aspect of getting stronger, like, but there has to be some core element of it that you enjoy, or you're not going to stick with it. I firmly believe.
Let me ask you a question. This is an interesting one that I heard from other coaches, and I don't know how often this occurs. First off, let me also say, when I was talking about burnout, I brought up Hansa. I don't know if he retired from burnout. I just want to say, I just know he
Right,
retired, so it made me think about it.
right,
But go to his page because I think he talked about it, and he might have his own reasons. So I wasn't necessarily connecting the two, just to clear that up now.
sure.
And I'm going to be in that kid's DMs trying to talk him into like, what is the story here, son? Are you coming back in a year or
Yeah,
two? Because if you do, we're rocking and rolling all over again. But anyways, I have heard about coaches whom, when they take on a client and they are working with different variables, taking out variables, adding new ones, trying to find things, I've actually heard, and I'm not going to name coaches or athletes, but actually the coach parting ways with an athlete, whether it be the athlete themselves isn't buying into the process and it's kind of apparent, and they're like, I don't think this is going to work. Shake hands. Let's move it. Keep it moving. And that I guarantee you that's going to happen. Certain people aren't patient. And you're like, look, what's going on here? You're not doing what I'm saying. Or they're changing variables. It's not working. They feel it's going to take time, but they feel the athlete being impatient, and they'll put it on themselves being like, look, okay, fine. I'm not getting you where you want to go. Let's part ways. Knowing in the back of their mind, they're not trying to pick a fight, but they're telling themselves, it's going to take so much time to find the proper variable and change. This could take year, 2 years, whatever. You don't want to hear that. If I told you, hey, look, it might be 2 years, 3 years till we get you peaking. Year 4, holy shit, you're winning nationals. Year 5, you're at worlds. Year 6, you're podiuming. Year 7, you're winning. But he's like, right now, year 1 and 2, I don't know. And you don't want to hear that, but I'm going to tell you, I don't know how to get you stronger right yet. I can get you reasonably strong, but not your expectations. And I've actually heard of coaches, I don't know if the word firing an athlete is the one, but I've heard of that top end too. We're talking real people.
Yeah, Yeah.
And both the athlete and the coach.
Yeah.
And or maybe they just couldn't. Maybe you get an athlete and you're like, I can't figure this out right now. I'm dead ass honest. I'm not sure. You know, have you ever ran into this or heard of this at least
Yeah.
within your inner circles?
Yeah. I've definitely had people where they're like, man, I know coaches. Like, so I know coaches are like, yeah, man, I've been working for like a year or two, and I keep trying, I can't figure it out, and I feel like it's not fair to them, and I'm taking their money if I can't figure it out, and they send them to someone else who's going to be able to figure it out. And I have a lot of respect for that because I feel like
Yeah.
today as coaches, we got to be here for the clients. As far as me personally, I tell my clients this all the time. I said, I don't care what your life variables are. Because man, look, I have clients who are nurses, parents, firefighters, military. If I cared just about variables, I wouldn't be working with Ashton because Ashton's variables suck, man. But my thing is, I always tell my clients this. I said I will be as patient as I need to. I can work around whatever's going on. There's only two things that I will not tolerate from a client. One is if a client's not being honest with me, because I can't do my job fully if you're not being honest with me about what's going on, your variables, if you're going on program, overshooting, whatever, right? So I won't tolerate deceit. And the second one is I can't feel like I care more than you do. So what I mean by that is if it's a thing where, hey, it's going to take us a year or two to get some stuff figured out or whatever, but you're down for that, you're with the process, that's fine. But if it's this thing where you tell me, hey, man, I don't care what I have to do, how long it takes, I want to be at this level, then I'm going to match the energy you bring, right? But if it's this thing where I'm having to constantly reach out to you, hey, man, you haven't sent me your videos. Hey, man, you haven't filled out your sheet. Hey, man, haven't heard from a week. Hey, man, you skipped this, and this. And that becomes a repeated thing. And I now feel like I care more about your training than you do. That's when I'll let you go. Because it's like, look, man, I'm willing to put in the time to work. But if you can't meet me halfway, this isn't going to work. Because that's time and energy I'm putting towards trying to help you get figured out. You're not sending me what I need. And that's time and energy that could be going to another client who's willing to pay the same price you are, but who actually cares, right? At that point, absolutely. And I have had some higher level lifters who have potential where I've had to drop them over that because it's like, man, we're only 3 blocks in and you've already jumped off program 3 or 4 times, or hey, it's a deload week. You call me, ask me, hey, coach, I want to make sure this is working exactly right. I lay out for you perfectly. And then you go 1 rep max YOLO and stuff like that. Like I'm not tolerating that. Cause at that point, like, and it's funny because I know a lot of coaches where they'll almost be passive with something like that. It's like, oh, but they're this strong at that high level lifter. I'm like, for me, ethically, I don't care if this is trying to break 1,000-pound total and this dude has potential to be number 1 in this weight class. They're paying me the same. I should have the same expectations of them. And if this guy's constantly going off program and doing A, B, and C, but I tolerate it because he's stronger, knowing I wouldn't tolerate it from this guy's trying to break 1,000-pound total, I'm not doing it. So for me personally, when it comes to stuff like that, yeah, I will definitely drop somebody, but it's not so much because it's a long process. It's about, are you willing to match my energy during that process? And I'm always big on being honest with the client based on it. It's like, hey man, like I've had some people come to me like, hey man, listen, you're this beat up, you're this injured. Pitre's a great example. When he first came, I said, hey man, listen, because you're dealing with all these different things, this first half year together, a lot is going to be getting you healthy. But if we can do that, I promise you, like, we can get you further beyond. But the thing is, Pitre was so self-aware where he was aware, like, hey, man, I know I got to get help. Like, I know he said, and Pitre was so confident, so being like, I know I'm strong. I know what I'm capable of. And I would put in the time and work to do it. So because I was honest with him outright, because it would have been one thing if I would tell him, oh, man, we get you healthy in 3 months. If I would have told him that and then he's not, he'd have every reason to be pissed and want to leave. But because I'm transparent, like, hey, man, this is how long it might take. And that's why I think it's so important for coaches to be transparent with, like, hey, yes, I've helped this client get to this point, but with your circumstances, this is about how long it might take. That way, if you do it faster than that, awesome. But if you don't, the client has a reasonable expectation of what's going to happen and when, right? So I feel like honesty and transparency from both the coach and client is so important. The client needs to be realistic with, these are my goals. I mean, part of my questionnaire literally says, what are your specific goals and within what time frame do you want to accomplish it? Because I need to know where you're at. That way I can tell you where I'm at and if I can help you. If I feel like, you know what, man, I'll be honest, I don't think I can help you with this, but there's no coach who can get you where you want that fast, I'll let them know that. But if it's something where it's like, you know what, man, I don't think I'm the best fit for you based off this, but I think this guy might be, I'll let them know that. There's no shortage of clients.
See, yeah, hats off to you for that, man. To be like, hey, look it. Yeah, like that's confidence.
We're not a good fit. Like, I'll get it this way. Look, man, there's no I'm somebody where I very much pride myself on the variety of clients that I work with. There's some coaches that can only work with a specific type of personality type. I work with 80+ lifters, different backgrounds and personality types, and I'm proud of that. But if it's something where you're that one random person where, like, you know what, due to your circumstances or due to like your like during the consultation calls, like, hey man, the call went well. I know you're excited, but I don't think I'm going to be the best fit for you, and here's why. But here's a whole recommendation list of coaches I have for you to go to. It's because at the end of the day, I want you to still be the best you can be. And if it's not me, then it's someone else. And same thing with my current clients. It's like, thank God, because they're patient, I'm able to take the time to figure out what needs to happen and go down with them. But I always let the client know, like, but hey, if I've tried everything that I know, and I've even tried to ask for help from others, and I can't get it figured out, I will send you to someone who can. Because there's no shortage of clients, and I have no confidence in myself to be like, if nothing else, I can learn from this and be okay, why couldn't I get that figured out? Learn from it, so that way the next time it happens, you're ready for it, right? But you can't be so money hungry or so scared of, oh, what does this look like as a coach if I can't figure this out? Like, dog, that's how you get better. It's just part of the process. So yeah.
That's what it is a lot of people are like, I can't say I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah. It's like, no, you're not going to know everything. Sometimes you got to figure it out over time or with somebody else and outsource it. And if you can't, if you're like, I can't say that. I can't say you know what, this might take a couple of years for me to figure this out by switching things up constantly, and then I'll finally land on it. But I
Yeah.
can't tell right now until without time, taking things in and out constantly over time to figure it out. It's going to take quite a bit of time. And if your timeline doesn't match up with mine, maybe you keep it moving. And that's some people be worried, like, what does that look like? Does a person leave and then say, yeah, I was with Marcellus, but he couldn't? I think it'll be easier. Things easier for you now because you are so established and you've done so much with all these world champions and all the things you have, where it's like, people probably aren't going to be able to say, yeah, he's not a good coach. It's like, well,
Yeah.
his resume is already solidified. It probably gets
Yeah.
easier and easier. Never easy, just
Sure.
easier anyways, to be confident enough to say that. But I can
Sure.
see where early days, early goings, and you're trying to carve your teeth, so to speak, in the industry, it'd be more difficult because
Absolutely.
people start talking about you wild, and you're like, shit,
Yeah.
I
And
don't
that, and
have,
yeah.
Ashton and Bobb, what I did with them to fly on.
Yeah.
Like, no, I can, right?
And that's why I tell coaches, I said, listen, things you do to learn more and to get better when you first start are the things you need to continue. Like, I tell people this, all the stuff that I used to do when I first started to try to be better, I still do those things. I'm still constantly, if another major coach is putting on information or content that I was, whatever, I'm watching. Like, I'm a part of powerlifting now, right? But guess what? I can just put my video out there and be good. No, I watch all the other coaches' content every single month because I'm always trying to learn more. I'm always trying to get better. I think a lot of coaches get passive when they get to the level I'm at. And that's when they start to make mistakes because they're like, oh, I got it. I know I figured out. Dude, you might get a client who could have been the next whatever, right? But because you got so passive with your learning, they might have circumstances you don't know how to work around. They might need program you know how to work around. So there's that aspect of it. But I think a big part of it is you have to remember, hey, listen, at the end of the day, you work for your client. You don't work for the public opinion. I think a lot of coaches get caught up with that. Because like you said, it's like, oh, but if I don't figure this out, what are they going to think? Like, oh, Marcellus can figure this out. Bro, you're working for the client. And if you know you can't figure things out for the client, then the best thing you can do for the client is send them to someone who can. They will have far more respect for you. They will probably speak far more highly of you versus if you keep them on and you keep failing them, then they will have reason to leave you and go talk badly about you. So people have to look at it, like I always tell people, even though, yes, it's the right thing to do, the right thing to do is also usually the most beneficial thing for you to do long term. It's funny how that works, right? It's like usually the most ethical decision is going to be better for you long term anyway. It's going to lead to betterment for you in terms of your character. And because with coaching, man, that's so much about it. Like your name and your character is everything. So it's like, just be honest with where you're at. It's okay that you don't know it all. And listen, I'll say right now, Marcellus Williams doesn't know it all. Joey Flex doesn't know it all. Stephen Novi doesn't know it all. We are all constantly can still be learning and building and growing and stuff like that. At the end of the SPD Raleigh meet, me and Joey were talking because Joey's like, man, why do you think it is like we're seeing like this big thing with the 83s? I was like, because people are learning more. I was like, Jurins is in his mid-30s, but him and this coach, they keep trying to learn more. Like just say, hey, you watch content, they figure out what works for them, right? So it's this thing where if you always have the mentality of like, you know what, I can be better, or even viewing it as like, hey, I'm not the best of the best yet. If you always keep that mentality, you'll keep learning, you'll keep trying different things, and it'll keep you elevating, keep you from being passive, right? Because I can tell you right now, man, especially after Worlds, like the same way as hungry as I was, like the first pro meet, Virginia Pro, when there was really eyes on me and my team and stuff like that. I'm even hungrier now than what I was then. So I'm trying to be on top of everything. but but it has to always be from the perspective of I want to be the best coach I can be for the sake of my clients, not for the sake of the public's opinion, right? That's a big part of being like when it comes to handling certain calls that I'll make on certain things is because it's like, listen, if I know this is my client's goal, this is what they want, and I think it's there, the potential's there, can I play it safe and just go, let's just take a small 2.5 PR? Yeah, but if this is what they're here for, let's go for it. Now, is it a possibility that if they miss, that people are like, oh, that was a really bad call, blah, 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 they're talking about this? Yeah, but guess what? I'm not working for them. I'm working for my client. And I already know, like let's use Bob, for example, right? Let's say like for PLA nats, right? It's like, okay, by the second pool, we feel like we already, because you have to have a priority of goals for sure. You have to be realistic. Our first goal was to win. But it's kind of like when you feel like you got that, that's already locked in, right? And I can finish out the day by like, okay, let's just do a 2.5, 5 kilo jump so it looks really clean on paper. Like, oh, he had a 9 for 9, 8 for 9 day. If I can do that, or I can load the weight that I know Bob really wants to try to secure the total that he wants. It's one thing if I think there's no way he has it, then that would be foolish to load. But if I think that it's like a 90% plus chance that he's got, right, and he wants it, and I can choose to either like play the safe number to wrap up the day, make it look pretty, and then public opinion is like, oh man, Marcellus, such good calls. But then I know that Bob isn't happy because I didn't trust him to go for what he wanted. Or I can be like, hey, you already got the win locked up. This is what he came here for. I think it's there. He thinks it's there. Let's go for it. And then maybe he misses it. And it was like, oh, that was like, he could have just played it safer. But Bob was like, thank you for letting me go for what I want, because that's what I hired you for. It's not a hard choice to me. I work for my clients. So I think that's something that a lot of coaches, I think coaches are actually better at that when they first start. I think they kind of get worse with that as they get higher level because, oh, there's more eyes on you and you don't want people to say this and that. You don't work for public opinion. You work for your clients. At the end of the day, the client's word of mouth is what's going to keep your image good. So you need to work for your client. I'm a big believer in that.
It's kind of like that expression, don't judge the decision I made if you don't know the options I had.
Exactly.
And you don't know in the background
Yeah.
what's on the table for you, and the client telling you like, this means a lot to me. I give a shit. I mean, talking about worlds, Penna was talking about the French Federation very highly covets the world champion or the world games, and getting the maximum amount possible of lifters to represent France at the World Games was a big time priority. So their second attempt deadlift solidified Penna for World Games and onto the podium, but it was 285. His third attempt, 287.5. Now, the grinds that he puts out and the effort he puts out on 285, and he missed 287.5, but not by a ton. But the 2.5 kilo difference on a top end deadlift it feels the exact same. So looking at it, it would be like, why wouldn't you just load up 287.5 on your second and put yourself in the lead and make other people pulling after you have to outpull you, as opposed to tie them? Why would you tie them on your second to be on the podium? And it's the bigger picture of, well, the different variables of world games, etc. Now, that was an interesting situation where possibly, coaching staff, federation, athlete may or may not be on the same page, and who the heck knows how that rolls out. But that's more an example of there's so many variables in the background that people don't know, and why they're doing certain things. Maybe the athlete is like, look at number 2, attempt 2, get me to world games. Attempt 3, go for the world championship. I don't care how close attempt 2 and attempt 3 are. Maybe that's a conversation. And the person who's handling is like, I'll get you to world games. And I won't, because maybe he always was going to miss 287.5, even on his second. Now you neither have world championship nor world games.
Yeah.
If that conversation happened ahead of time, the handler, the rest of the community would be like, hey, handler, you should have done this. And the handler, coach, would have been like, with all due respect, you don't know the conversations in the back.
Yeah.
This individual said, please get me to world games first. And if the shot is still there, right? So it's a good point.
And it's also subjective, because let's be real, there's a lot of calls that people are like, oh, that's a bad. I'll put it this way. I've done certain jumps before, right? Where when the lifter hits it, they're like, oh, Marcellus, perfect call. Whereas if I do the exact same jump, the lifter misses, oh, it was too aggressive. You know what I'm saying? So it's very subjective in that sense. But I think a big thing is this too, is what you said. You have to be on the same page. That's why every time I do the game day call with my clients, after we lay out like the numbers, right? Because that's what's the judge part. We then I said, okay, give me your top 3 goals in order. What's priority number 1? What's priority number 2? What's priority number 3? Make sure we do that. And when me and my clients got on our calls with Matt Gary, same thing. What's priority number 1? What's priority number 2? What's priority number 3? you have to be on the same page. So that way, if you do come down to a decision, you can make that decision based upon what the higher priority is. Or if you already take
Yeah.
care of one priority, okay, well then what do we value? You still care about priority number two. Like you gotta be on the same page with the stuff. And I think especially going into something like Worlds where there's so much to consider. There's winning, there's podium for World Games, there's records. It's like what does the lifter want? What does the team want? What's best for the country? There's different things that you have to account for with that for sure. But I think it really does still just come back down to being like, okay, well, we say we're here for the lifters, right? So I think the lifters' opinion should count for something, at least during the game, the game day planning, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm very big on that. But yeah, I mean that's the way we approach this with Worlds too. In terms of like certain numbers that were selected and certain choices that were made. It says the number one priority, of course, was win. But most of the number two priority was place top three if you can, and number three would be like, okay, we can hit a specific total. Let's go for that, right? So that's the way a lot of decisions were made accounted for, and you have to have those options. Like that's why I said, like for me, there's always option like the third temps. There's like three options for third temps: A, B, C. Because you got to have different variables. You don't know what you're gonna do like all day. You don't know what Soto's gonna do all the days. You gotta have those variables check and have those options.
And that's where I'm going to move on to another point that about coaching that we kind of briefly touched on, but it'll be interesting. But also when you're at Worlds, it's a stitch different because yes, you take in what the lifter wants, but you're also on Team USA or Team whatever. And the head coach is like, very nice. Appreciate that. But you're not lifting for yourself anymore. And my ass is on the line. Like if Team USA didn't win first place in men's, what do you think happens to Matt Gary? He's probably fired. He ain't coming back. He ain't coming back. And his whole legacy, his whole legacy is like, how do you have the dream team of men's and you didn't come in first? How does that happen to you? And Matt Gary's like, I got you. I have to cover my ass a little as well. And for all those reasons, all these some nations literally get government funding based off of how they perform at Worlds, and they have to take this into account. Or they have government funding based off of how many athletes they send to World Games. They have to take this into account. So there is other variables where it's like, it does become more complicated and we don't always see. Fans are always entitled to their opinion because that's what sports is. It's just, that's why I remove myself. I'm like, it's sports talk. Fuck it. Fans are allowed to fandom and be like, I didn't like this call. I like this. At least they're talking.
There's no
something
point
interesting. I know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
I'll say, there's no point in getting too caught up on it. If you're going to let your entire mood or decision be dictated by the fans, you're screwed. You're not gonna make it very long.
Yeah, agreed. Interesting we've seen this year, it probably happens every year, but this is stand out a little bit. Some high-end lifters, world level lifters, switch coaches and seen some gains relatively late in their career. And this isn't to say that like the previous, for instance, at Rally Meet, Angelo had Joe Stanek, who's Stanek's Perks coach. Stanek is, I mean, we can like Stanek knows what he's doing, obviously, and switch coaching. And now he went up to 835 PR, did phenomenal. Jurins, talking about him earlier, still with Joey Diva, but brought in Christian Ayandokun and they leveled it up again with a fresh set of eyes to be like, all right. And it's not to disregard what previous coachings did because they got him to that level. And Christian, who came on the podcast with Jurins, because I was like, how did this? Jurins is for sure leveled up at 35 years old in a father, crazy, stressful job, leveled up very late in the game. I'm like, how the hell did this happen, gentlemen? And Christian's like, I didn't reinvent the wheel with Jurins or redo his entire training. I just took his previous training and did some changes, some modifications to it. So it's not like, who knows if Christian took Jurins from day one, maybe they wouldn't have gotten everything laid out the way it did because of the previous coaching as well. So it doesn't take away from Joey Diva or Joe Stanek or whatever. All the data collected from the previous coaching gets to move forward with that athlete. So it does by no means credits them, but I don't even think it's at odds with what we said earlier. These guys are veterans of the game. Both those two I just mentioned, and there's others that I'm forgetting now. But anyways, that have done this year and seen massive gains late, sometimes when you've collected a shitload of data, hit a bit of a plateau, sometimes you're like, thank you very much. I'm going to take all this data, get a fresh set of eyes and be like, look at all the data points. Let me bring, if the old coach is like Joey Diva worked in conjunction with Christian because he loves Jurins. They're like brothers and he's still involved giving, advice and whatnot. And he'll be like, let me give you everything I know. Where some coaches will be like, you can leave, but you don't bring everything. I'm not
Yeah,
involved then. It becomes hurt feelings,
yeah,
whatnot. Other
yeah,
coaches are like, listen, if you're going to make this change, I'm going to save you a year and a half of possibly losing ground or whatever. I'm in. I just let me work this out. But we're
yeah.
seeing that a little bit now. And if Jurins didn't do that, he never would have beat Russ and become a world champ. The difference Jurins has been phenomenal this year at 35, this very late in the game. I think it's this late in the game. Okay. If you're a year or two in, kind of weird. The old coach is like, I have no data points on you, Playboy. I
Yeah,
don't know what the fuck. I'd never figured you out.
yeah, yeah,
8 years in, different. And
yeah,
we're seeing it. And I know you're friends with Joe Stanek and whatever. You know you've probably seen this. I just got a couple examples off the top of my head, but
sure.
how do you feel about that? And do you think we'll see more and more of that?
Well, to me, it's very simple, man. On two fronts, I'll cover 2 points you make. Because one, the thing you said about like how some coaches are like, okay, well, if you leave, I'm keeping all the data, blah blah blah. I make sure, because even though you hope if you have to drop a client or if they have to leave, you hope it's on decent professional terms. But sometimes that's not always the case, right? But what I do is instead of doing like an Excel where I have access to it and I can take it away, I always give them a full. I mean, on coaches, I give them a full master copy of the Excel. That way, no matter how things go in, you have all your past blocks of data. That's the way I see it. You paid for that. That's yours. It doesn't matter if you're 2, 3 years in or just 2 months in, and then suddenly like things aren't working out. You pay for that. That's yours. Take it. Because even let's say I had to drop a client because they just weren't doing what they need to do. My hope is that they can mature, be better, and when they come back to me or they go to someone else, that when they decide to, get right, that they have that data to help. Right. So I'm big on that. With that being said, in terms of like why I think the difference between, like, say, you went with a coach for like, a year versus 8 years is that, well, in my mind, if you've been with a coach for years, you've had enough time to have consistent data points to where they should be making some type of consistent progress. At the end of the day, a client is in and this is not to take away from the personal relationship aspect of it. That I would not be the coach I am today without the personal relationship aspect. I think that's what a lot of people like about the coaching. But at the end of the day, I understand that it is a business and you're paying me for a service. That service is to help you improve and get better. If you've been with me for years and you're not getting better, you do need to go to someone else because it's either a matter of I'm not doing what I need to as a coach to be trying to learn more, to have more options or more tools. Maybe I've gotten passive, or maybe I'm doing everything I can, but I just don't know what to do. In which case, maybe getting a new pair of eyes who can figure something out, even with all the past data, right, can be good for them. And maybe I might kick myself and be like, oh, why couldn't I see that if that ends up being the case? But at that point, that's something that I have to do. That's not the fault of the client. Like, I'm sorry. I like I said, this is why I think one thing that really does kind of help me, that gives me a little bit of an edge over a lot of these other top level coaches, that I do still lift and compete. So it's really easy for me to relate to my lifters and know where they're coming from. I have a coach. I stay with my coach because when we've had moments of maybe plateaus or stalls or whatever, I know he's doing everything he can to get things figured out, and we always do. But if I get to a point, man, where I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4 years without progress, my coach knows that I'm leaving. We're still gonna be the best of friends. I'm still gonna love and care about him. But it's like I'm not paying you to stay the same for 5 years. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it at that point. And I think the reason why we might see that is because I think certain people are realizing that, okay, and this isn't specific to any coach, but but this is a real thing. It's like sometimes, man, when you're new to this and you do the training stimulus, but you just have such a high genetic potential, you can get with the coach, you can do whatever programming wise, and because you're just getting some type of stimulus, you're getting better, you're getting stronger, you're improving, right? And because your genetic baseline is so high, you just so happen to be able to be in the top 5, top 3, or whatever, right? But like everybody else, no matter what your genetics are, you're going to eventually get to a point where just doing whatever doesn't work. You're going to need a very specific volume, intensity, frequency, rate of exposure. You're going to need very specific doses. And when you get to that point, if the coach you're with, even if you were with them for 2, 3 years and doing whatever was working, if they can't figure that stuff out for you specifically, even if they figured it out for others, or maybe they don't know how to figure that for anybody, they just keep getting a lot of high-end genetic people in their pool because it kind of cycles like, oh, well, this guy's strong, so I'm gonna go to him, and he cycles in or out, whatever. You're gonna eventually get to a point where you realize, okay, this isn't working anymore, and he doesn't know what to adjust to get better. And if that's the case, I think you're playing yourself if you don't start to kind of look into other options, right? Of course, always be honest with your coach, like, hey man, this is kind of how I'm feeling right now. Can we think you have any other things you can figure out for me? But if they don't, then I think that's perfectly reasonable. It's kind of like, look, if I go to a mechanic to fix my car and he's supposed to fix my car and I can't have to go back every month because he's not fixing it correctly, I'm gonna go to another mechanic. It's like it's as simple as that. So I don't necessarily think it's that we are gonna like we might see more of that, but I think we're only going to see it if a coach is running that problem where they can't get something quite figured out with that lifter. And sometimes it can be a personality thing. I think sometimes there is a level of buy-in that's important too, and I think that plays a role with it as well. But I definitely think a lifter has to be willing to be like, okay, am I satisfied with the progress I'm making? Am I getting where I want to be? Right. And like I said, I'm not telling a lifter to leave whenever you just have a stall or whatever. That's part of training. But it's about, okay, when I hit these stalls, do I have a coach who I know has shown and proved time and time again that they can figure out what to adjust to get through that? And I think that's a good part of it. I think a big part of it with Angelo was the fact that I think this new coach John, I think knows how to keep him healthy, and being healthy is such a good part of the game. So I think that's a big part of what works for him with that. With Jurins, I think what he described was perfect. The way that Christian described it was perfect, where it's like, he already had all this data, and it's not that what they were doing just wasn't working, but like I said before, just got to tweak a few things to get that top and exposure to show up the way that you want, right? So I think there's cases and situations like that. And then of course I always tell this, the client has to be honest with, okay, am I even doing everything I'm supposed to be doing? Because it's like, hey, maybe this works, but I'm not really on top of my eating, and I'm not on top of my sleep. I do skip a set here and there because it's like, when the coach writes the plan, the result they're expecting is based upon you following the plan. So if you're not following the plan, you can't really be mad if you're not getting results, because it's like, you know what I'm saying? You got to be honest. Like, I think that's important before the client decides to leave the coach. Have I given this coach a fair chance at trying different things? Have I done actually what I'm supposed to do as a client? And if you can say yes to both of those and it's been years you're not making progress, then yeah, it might be time to look at other options. That's what it is.
Yeah, Angelo's coach is John Song, right?
Yep. Yep.
And he also coaches Gavin. He's good. Gavin, I think he's coaching Gavin Aiden and like a bunch of other
I mean,
lifters
if you look at both Gavin and Angelo, they kind of had the same problems where they were getting hurt, and that was causing the issues. And I mean, part of what John does is like, he also does like the rehab coaching, stuff like that. So it would make sense to me that if you're getting clients who are coming from a background where it's like, hey, my coach was getting strong, but he wasn't the most knowledgeable keeping me healthy for whatever reason, then it would make sense that those type of people are going to do very well with John, where that's kind of his expertise, right? So.
It's it's also a situation. So here's everything you said first off is true. And there is situations where it's just fresh set of eyes. It's not even it's none of the other variables, and this will happen to every single person, period, in life, in business and everything. It's like, I'm driving myself crazy looking at this. New person comes in, is like, let me try that. And then you look back and like, God damn it. What did you do there? Or it can also even be athlete buy-in needs something new. They just need something new. And the refreshment of needing something new is all it takes for them to do a full-scale buy-in all over again. And that is just personality, and there's nothing that coach could have done. Yep. You know what it was? The relationship went stale. Yep. And they started associating their relationship with you, with the relationship with powerlifting, relationship of competing, and they needed to burn the house down and rebuild. And unfortunately, you see this in sports teams. They fire the coach. That coach goes to another team and they're winning championships all over again. It wasn't the coach, but they had to burn the house down, and there's nothing you could have done. And sometimes you tell yourself, it's nothing I could have done. It's literally past the numbers and into, psychologically speaking, they needed a fresh start. So they got a fresh start on it. And that's going to happen every now and then too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I also think it's good for coaches to have networks with other coaches. Because sometimes if you can just go ask another coach, hey man, I'm running into this problem, what do you think about this? And they give you that advice and you take it to the client, boom, the client's happy. They won't leave you. You know what I mean? But I think some coaches are even afraid to do that. They're afraid to even ask help from another coach. You know what I mean? But yeah, absolutely. With the fresh eyes and personality, there's so many different factors that go into it. But I'm just very big on, hey, as a lifter, you got to do what's best for you as a lifter. Just make sure you're being honest and objective with everything. And as a coach, you got to do what's best for the client. And if that's not you, it is what it is.
Here's where things get a little sticky.
Yeah.
If it feels like for the lifter, it's disloyal to leave a coach because they got you so far.
Yeah.
And this is where it becomes and this is another sports as well, more so less team sports because it's not the player, it's the management that hires fires. But like boxing, MMA, I see it all the time. I'll tell you like a story from MMA. It was Team Alpha Male, and one of the fighters became a world champion, hit super highs, left. And this is
Yeah.
TJ Dillashaw. He left. And then Cody Garbrandt was calling him a snake and a traitor and disloyal. These guys got you to a world championship and you left them after a while. And TJ's like, I got to make these decisions what's best for me. And so TJ and Cody end up fighting, and it was ugly. But then later on in his career, 5, 6, 7 years later, Cody left Team Alpha Man, and he had to do what was best for him. And a little bit of egg on the face, but I think there might be lifters whom might find themselves in situations where, look, what have your numbers changed in the last 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, whatever? Have they changed much, to your point earlier? And it's no disrespect to your coach. Maybe it's just you've gone stale with them or whatever it is. There's a million reasons. It doesn't mean your coach isn't world class.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you can't be friends later, hopefully.
Yeah.
But sometimes coaches will lean on the loyalty factor, disloyal or whatever the heck. But
Sure.
in reality, you have situations like when Leah stopped being coached by Penna, and Penna's done world champ. Everyone knows how good Penna is. They're still best friends. They're like family.
Yeah.
Penna's like my friend. We're family. Those guys are so tight, and they're still tight to this day. And so sometimes you have that where a coach is secure enough to be like, nothing changes between us. Don't worry. I hope nothing but the best for you.
Yeah.
But there are people who will be like, I can't leave them. It's disloyal. And it'll be at their detriment. And they will literally keep putting up the same total year after year. Now, here's where things get interesting. That's okay if you're winning.
Yep.
It's not when the rest of the field slowly starts creeping up and all of a sudden, now you're faced with some tough
that's
situations.
What people,
now what are you going to do?
And that's what people have to understand. It's easy to say, oh, I'm still doing good. There's always going to be that young guy out there who you never heard of, who you don't know, who's working his butt off, who found a coach that works well for him, or who's doing whatever, who is aiming for you. And if you get passive, you and Austin were talking about this. Like Austin's like, I always have to get better. It doesn't matter how good I am, I have to keep getting better. Because if anyone catches me, that's on me, right? And part of that is, if you look and you think, man, but it's been the same for 4 or 5 years. I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as a lifter. It's not going with my coach. But what I will say is, I mean, I've had clients come to me who come from a coach where they said, yeah, I'd actually want to leave like my old coach for a while, but it's been like this loyalty thing. And I've seen other people leave him or leave her, and then they get mistreated, blah, blah, blah. So I personally believe that while that's just an issue, I believe that is an issue caused by the coach themselves. I believe it's on us as coaches to make it clear that, hey, listen, this is a business. I want to create an environment where you feel safe to be open and honest with your needs and what's going on. And if we get to a point where you feel like I'm not providing what you need, I want you to feel comfortable expressing it, right? Like whatever the reason may be, whether it's like I'm leaving for another coach or hey, I'm having financial issues, whatever. Like the client should be comfortable enough to talk about it, right? Just like in any work setting, right? Like your employees, if you're a manager, your employees should be comfortable coming to talk to you about things that they should be able to talk to you about, right? So my hope and my encouragement to coaches is to try to create that environment. Like a lot of my clients who are coaches who are coming up, I really emphasize that to them. Like, hey, your clients should be comfortable talking about things. Don't take it. It's going to bother you. If a client has to leave, especially from the country, it's going to hurt. But it's all about how you respond to it. You can learn from it and choose to still treat them with kindness and respect and wish them the best and learn from it. Or you can be bitter, but that's not helping you or the client. You know what I mean? And if you stay, and if they are afraid to talk to you, they still get a sense of loyalty. It only makes you look bad anyway, because eventually they will get tired and they will leave you. Or if they stay, people are going to be like, man, this person's been with this guy for 4, 5, 6 years and hasn't had anything to do his total. So it's always to, once again, your benefit to just treat people with respect and go things about the right way and just learn from it. Like not everybody's for everybody. Every coach or high level coach, has had clients have to leave it for one reason or another. It just is what it is. Just learn from it and you keep it going. But yeah, that's definitely a part of it. The kind of like the it's almost like a cult mentality, almost like you can't leave, and it's just like that's not healthy, man. Like don't get me wrong, I love that my clients when they like reference craftsmanship and they love like being a part of something, but I want them to love being a part of it because it's something positive, not out of a sense of fear or this weird sense of loyalty where if you leave, we're gonna mistreat you or none of that nonsense. So Yeah, no, I definitely think that's a very valid point with it for sure.
And I wonder, you looking out into the landscape and you just want like shakeup happen all the time. And you're like, I don't know. Sometimes you associate one person with a coach or a couple of people with a certain coach, and you're like, how embedded are you that you feel now you can't leave?
Yeah,
How embedded are you right now? Be like,
yeah,
fuck me, if I need to shake something up, like, and it's tough. And I think as a coach, it would hurt, even though you want the best for them. It's like a
sure,
breakup. You're like, holy shit, my man. You're like,
sure.
holy shit, it would hurt, but it hurts even though you understand and you're okay with it. You would still, it would bother me. I'm a relationship guy. I'm very
Yeah,
extroverted. I like people. I like conversations with people, and people to me is a big deal. Some people like I hate people, like whatever. They're the total opposite of me, and they all believe they wear like a with their on the badge of honor or whatever. I'm the opposite. I'm a relationships guy. So for me, I guarantee you it would hurt, super duper hurt. I would still get it because in this conversation, I know like you want the best for him, and you hit a plateau, and you're like, I'm not seeing it. Maybe a fresh set of eyes would. All of the rest of it, and an athletic career is so big, you don't have time to mess around. If you got 3 years left on, like, look at. We'll get into this because there's a bit of a changing of the tide in certain divisions we're seeing, and we'll get into that in a sec because it's very exciting. But your athletic primes are only so big. If I'm not seeing something and I need a couple years, or maybe I've already had a couple years, you got to go. You got to go. We don't have 20 years. We're not going to figure this out like this. Like you have 3 more years. You've given for the last 2 years. I haven't moved you at all. And I'm telling you, give me a little more time. I would understand. Like my friend, I
yeah,
gave the last two, it hasn't moved. I got no more time. I got to go. I would understand, but it would hurt like dog. I don't even know what it'd be like if fucking Pitre ends up on a different team. I'd be like, I'm not even you. And I'd be like,
yeah,
no, dude,
yeah,
it's you and Marcellus. What are you doing? But
yeah,
I'd be
yeah,
out of pocket to even say that.
yeah.
You got to do
No,
what's best for you. But even
it's
on
a
the
good.
outside, I would be like, holy
It
shit,
looks
that would.
crazy.
But
Yeah. Yeah. It looks crazy. It's a good example though, like because it's like it goes back to 2 points we already made. The first point being you gotta live for you. Because I'm sorry, if you're at a point where like your example, okay, it's been 4 or 5 years, the needle's not moved, and my goal is to be the best I can be, but you're staying with that coach out of loyalty, you're no longer lifting for you. You're lifting for that coach. That's how I
right,
feel about it. And
that's true.
at the same time, as a coach, to me, that is my incentive. That's my motivation to stick. Guess what? I don't want Pitre to go anywhere. I don't want Ashton to go anywhere. So I need to make sure I am at least saying that I truly can be honest, say I'm doing everything I can to be the best coach I can. Because guess what? With all three of those guys, we've had moments where it's like, man, this isn't quite working and blah, blah, blah. But I'm working my butt off to get it figured out, right? And thankfully I've been able to. But if it gets to a point where eventually I can't figure it out, and it's been like, I would hope like, hey, if something happens where I can't figure it out immediately, they give me some time because I've shown that I can before, right? But
Yeah,
if it's like,
yeah,
all
yeah.
right, man, it's been a year or two of the same thing, we haven't gone through it, it's gonna hurt, but I get it. I get it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and so it's not even about like if it hurts or not, but it's more about just like how do you handle that hurt? How do you respond to it? You know what I mean?
That's what it
That's
is.
that's that's the what it comes down to. And what's good is that this one man, I mean, all like use me for example. I told you all Petre's not just my client, man. Petre's my friend. Petre's my brother. I want to see the best for him no matter what. And if I get to a point where for whatever reason that's not me, I'm still gonna wish him the best. Am I gonna always wish it was me? Yeah, but guess what? We have such a good friendship now that should overrule anything as far as the coach client stuff if he chooses to move somewhere else, right? Now, like I said, I ain't worried about that. You know what I mean? Because
Hey, no, no,
your boy gonna make sure he's on top of it. But
that's right.
that's
But
that's part of my incentive. It's part of why I truly do. I'm very grateful, and it's very humbling when people say stuff like, "Oh man, you're a great coach, man. You're the current GOAT coach." Blah blah blah. I don't ever view it that way in my mind. I'm not falsely humble. I think I'm one of the best in the game, right? Straight up. I really do. And I haven't always been able to say that, but I really do feel that way at this point. But it's like I want to continue to get better. So,
mm,
I think the two kind of go hand in hand. If you don't want to have to deal with that situation, make sure you're doing everything you can, right? Because like you said, sometimes there are those exceptions where you truly have done everything you know to do. And it just you just can't figure it out, right? But I think if a lot of coaches are honest and they're like, man, did I really do everything? Did I really look into everything I could have? I think a lot of coaches are honest and probably realize, I probably could have done a few things better here and there. You know what I mean? So, and I don't want that to be. So,
to an extent, if you're winning, even if there's not been any progress, but every year you're winning, you can somewhat rest on your laurels and not be investigating like you might be investigating, or you're stretched and you kind of, well, sometimes we take things for granted. And then you look back and think, God damn it. The best example though of two people being super tight, they split and they're still super tight. Off the top of my head is Leah and Penna. And Penna since gotten multiple time world champion since, so there's no question he's a phenomenal coach and athlete. Leah since world titles with Penna as well as with another coach. Again, same deal where they're both fine. And in terms of them not working together as coach athlete, to this day, like you want to talk like family, they work together. Penna's wife is her best friend. They see each other every day. They train every day. And when they relocated from France, Paris to the south of France, all of them up and moved to the other side of the country together. That's how close they are. And that is the prime example of putting, and it's good. Like I love Penna, but honestly, he put his ego aside and is like, if you need to find another coach, that's fine. You are still family to me, and I mean it, and not just saying it. And they are as tight gets still to this day, and that's probably the best against. And everything's fine. His coaching service has never been bigger. He's still getting multiple world champions and all the rest of it. It's crazy. It's not the end of the world. It is, to your point, it's going to hurt. Don't try to pretend it doesn't. And don't, as men, sometimes we do, I'm sure women do too, but as men, we want to be like, I don't care. It is what it is. It's like, it's okay to care. It's going to hurt. It's how you manage that hurt. That's when you start dealing with that and recognizing this hurts. What am I going to do with it? Well, don't get toxic. Don't get toxic. They're not trying to hurt you. They're still the same guy or girl. They made a tough situation. Don't try your best not to take it personal and get toxic. You could still, maybe you can or cannot be still in their lives. But if it's like, I mean, it's you and Pitre are fine. I'm using you guys because I know you're tight. You guys are tight like Penna and Leah would be tight. You don't lose a fucking friend over this type of shit. You guys will be tight until long after he's retired from powerlifting. Same with like Leah Penna type deal, like whatever. There's a lot of these relationships. It's a blessing. Keep it. No pun when I said it's a blessing.
No, no. And the last point I'll make on that particular topic is this: I'm like, are you confident in your capabilities as a coach or not? Because if you're confident in your capabilities as a coach, then even if a client has to leave, even if it's one of your high-level lifters, you should be confident that you can evaluate what happened, learn from it, and continue to still do well. If you're one of these coaches where you're putting so much of your stock investment in just one lifter, then I'm thinking you're not even confident in your own capabilities as a coach. You're confident that lifters, their fame or their name to kind of carry your coaching. And I don't think it should be that way, man. Like I said, Michael C, Ashton, Pitre, all they came to me when I didn't have any big names on me because they saw what I was already doing with other people, right? And that's why I tell people, like, if God forbid, like, Ashton or Pitre or something like leaves, I'm not just like, oh man, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna keep doing what I do, keep trying to strive and grow and be better, and just keep getting other people to that level. That's what you do. If you're somebody where like you're making your entire coaching career off of just having a super high level lift that's 6 feet forever, you're screwed. And like I know so many local coaches, full rosters, 20, 30, 40 lifters where they don't have any like world level lifters on it. But guess what? They have a full-time business. They live off it very well. Why? Because the service they offer is quality. And there's always somebody, even not going to be a world champion, who wants that quality service. So you can't bank your coaching off just your best lifters. It's not going to last. Because even if you do, they do stay with you. What do you do when they all retire? You know what I mean?
You're in trouble. Or if you, to an extent, if you're a smaller level lifter, and like, look, 99% of the population is going to be those are the 1%ers for a reason. Like, not many people coming into powerlifting are going to be going after only big name, big level coaches. Doesn't mean you're going to get the same results, nor the same attention. You want to give everybody the same attention, etc. But you're just naturally, certain people, if you've been with someone for 10 years and you're as tight as brothers or brother, sister, whatever the situation is, you go with certain coaches. It's like they're not even looking your way. Like, again, I'm an MMA fan. Certain people go to certain mega gyms that have produced multiple time world champions, leave being like, yeah, I'm not getting the attention the world champion is once he walks in the room. Well, no shit. And just go with whoever's getting you the best results. Stop necessarily. You want to make
Yes.
sure the guy or girl has a history of posting up good results, but chasing the big time isn't always going to work in your favor because
Yeah.
you're still small time yourself. Be
Yeah.
humble, you
Yeah,
know?
and also I told people, I said, listen, every coach is a big time coach right now. We all started somewhere. There's some of these coaches out there was like, listen, dude, this coach can be the next Joey Flex, the next, next versus whatever, but you're not even getting him a chance because like, oh, but he's not this and he's that. I remember this one dude who reached out to me, with a name, he reached out to me and he was like, hey man, so I was working with this one dude that you recommended to me. It was going really, really well. Making progress was great, but then I had to take a break to different stuff. And I'll come back into it before I go back. So I want to say like, oh, but do you still have openings? I told him, I said, man, I don't, but if I did, I wouldn't take you. I said, because you just told me that this dude I recommended to you, you're making great progress with him. But you're so caught up on this idea, the idea of me, the idea of what you think I can do for you, but you already have history with this dude. He's already doing great with you. I said, and if he's on my recommendation list, it's because I believe he's someone who's capable of being just as good of a coach, if not better than me someday. Stick with him, man. And thankfully he did. And now the dude is killing it, making PRs,
Good,
making great
man.
progress. But
That's all for you to say that, man.
yeah, it's like because I know for me, I know for look, I was coming up, I wasn't on anyone's coach recommendation list. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like there weren't these big networks like that. I would have loved for that opportunity, but it's like I know that I was at that point where it's like, hey, I know what I can do. I know I'm good at this. I just need the opportunity to do different things. And thankfully, I had people come my way who gave me the opportunity to show what I can do. I wouldn't be known where I am right now if back then people were like, oh, well, he's not a big name coach, so I'm not going to go to him. You got to give people the opportunity to shine. You know what I mean? So it's that's the way that I kind of perceive it when it comes to all of it.
Yeah, take a look at the gains you made. If you put it on 30 kilos in your total, what are you trying to fix? Just
Yeah,
chill a
that's all I'm
minute.
saying. That's what I'm
Chill a
saying.
minute. If you believe that you can emerge, how come you can't believe your coach can emerge too, huh? Like
Exactly.
Joe
Exactly.
Borenstein is look what Joe Borenstein did, and his coach doesn't have a big, extensive coaching background for powerlifting.
Yeah.
He's kind of 1 foot in the game, 1 foot out, doing a bunch of other things. Well,
Yeah.
and Joe Borenstein went with him.
Yeah.
And Joe Borenstein's, we're going to get into all this. I got to do a pee break before we do. I want to get
Yeah.
into
You get.
all of that because it's
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
juicy and hot right now. But,
Yeah.
anyways, closing off this, yeah, man, freaking give some of these guys an attempt because Joe Borenstein, it's a great segue. You want to take a 2-minute pee break, sir?
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
And how are you good for time? Dude, we fucking have chatted for 2 hours already.
I know. I know. And we haven't even talked about
About
Pitre,
anything.
Bobb, Ashton, or anything.
Dude,
Yeah. I
like,
know.
I
I know.
love it.
Yeah.
Are you okay for time? Because I know
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Okay,
good.
okay,
I'm
cool.
good. I'm good.
Okay, cool. 2-minute pee break, dude. We'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay. We're back in yeah, I wanted to talk to you about we could talk about World's Rally and some of the outcomes, but some people have been in the DMs and it might be a little early for some weight classes, but they're saying, my goodness, like a year ago, we were talking about the 74s had like the GOAT, Taylor Atwood, etc. And in the 83s, it was just Russ by 20 kilo spreads, taking it. And then even earlier this year, posting up 860, a considerable amount over the world record. So this is how the year started. And now coming into, I mean, it's just August, only halfway through. I got people in my DMs talking about Taylor's never going to make another world team, and that's past. And people saying like Joe Bornstein was on the podcast, and it's not necessarily. You could see the pathway where he's like, look, it is what it is. I don't think Russ is even going to make another world team, let alone become a world champion anymore, because now I'm here. And I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
861, or sorry, I did 865 and I'm 21. And
Yeah.
he's like, he's like, I mean, no disrespect. I think he's the GOAT 83 with based off of, whatever the huge win streak in the whole nine. But everybody has their day. I'm 21, hit 865. That door is closed for you. If worlds means you got to get through me, I bet you're not getting through me. Of course, he's going to say that. He's the athlete, whatever. But bigger picture wise, talk about, and he may or may not be like maybe Russ levels up, but more to the point, and we'll talk about worlds, etc. But holy smokes, is powerlifting just when you think you got it, this is the way it goes. Russ is the 83. The fact that this is the conversation, not even a prediction, is he right? Is he wrong? The fact this is now the conversation from earlier this year PA Nats when he did 860 and it looked like he'd be creaming at everybody like he normally does, to August, and we're talking, what? This is actually a conversation we have to entertain?
Yeah.
It's crazy. To Atwood, the GOAT, the guy, of course he's going to win the first Sheffield. When he's like, I'm going to cream everybody at Sheffield, and that's that. Everyone was like, probably. No, he's coming in fifth at that Sheffield, and he hasn't been back. You know, he loses that Worlds, and we don't know if he's going to get the Worlds again. He's got to go through Perk.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's very difficult. You know, it's the way it is. And you feel some tides of change coming.
Yeah. No, things shift very quickly, man. We see it year after year where someone does something one year, it's like, oh my gosh, this is the new standard. Then the following year, 2-3 more people do the same thing. And the guy that did it the first time is at an even higher point, right? First of all, it made me really happy to see Bornstein do his thing, just because Joe and I talk a lot. We hit each other up a lot in DM, stuff like that. Fellow brother in Christ, and just somebody where, like, he's somebody where not even just from like that, like I just like watching the dude live, man. Like I said, as a powerlifter myself, as for myself, I still like watching other people train and do stuff for my own motivation and pushing me, and seeing him like just consistently get better meet after meet after meet. And then knowing, he was talking to me about it because, Pitre, he originally asked me to handle him at Jurins. I wasn't able to be there, so I hooked him up with Pitre. And knowing what his plans were for that meet, and knowing based on what his training, how his training was, and stuff he showed me his training and what he was capable of, it was exciting, right? So when he got hurt and stuff like that, that was rough. But I talked to him about that, give a few points on some stuff with rehabbing, talking about like, hey man, maybe try peeking into it this way so your lifts are a little bit more spaced out. So to see him do his thing was awesome, just knowing that he is capable of it. But there's a difference between being capable of something and doing it, man. Like you said, Russ just hit that 860. So for him to hit that 865 and hit it clean, I believe it was 27 white lights on everything too. I believe, which is.
I'm not sure, but maybe,
I think something like that.
9 for 9 at least.
So it's like for him to do that as young as he is crazy. And there's just different ways of looking at it, right? So okay, you got Joe, who's super young, a lot of room to grow potential, just moved up, only a second meet at that weight class, and has hit the strongest total in the class we've ever seen, right? And then you got Jurins in his mid-30s, been doing this for years and years, and still managed to make his progress and come out and win worlds, right? And then even if you look at everybody else, man, like looking at what Angelo and Chris Perez did, right? Like that would have won, USAPL Nats last, you know what I mean? And like being that close to the world record, right? I mean, it's kind of like if you take Joe out of the equation for that meet and you look at how close everything was with Delaney, Chris, and Angelo, that's probably one of like the tightest battles in 83 kg history, you know what I mean? So then to have him be there on top of that is crazy, but it definitely is a shifting because once again, like we said, there's different things you have to account for, different genetic components, of course, for the gene pool's expanding, but people are also learning more, like I said, like Luke, Joe's coach clearly knows what he's talking about, clearly knows what he's doing in terms of like, hey, making small changes at a time and stuff like that. So there's just so much more available to people now. And I think that's why we're seeing people blow up faster, make progress faster. Now, granted, a lot of those people also, they make progress fast and they kind of like burn out or stall out. But with Joe, and the fact that he has such a good, knowledgeable coach who knows how to do this stuff. And like he said, I listened to that podcast too. I know he said that, even though I'm not powerlifting still myself and I don't have this huge roster, I'm still very passionate about powerlifting in itself. So like learning more about it. And it's like, and to be able to have that type of mind with a focus on just Joe, and like, I think he has like 3 clients, like 2 other clients, I think it's very advantageous for Joe for sure. And it's crazy, man. It's crazy to see just everyone leveling up, right? I mean, I remember before PLA Nats, people were saying like, oh, maybe Chris breaks into like the 820, 830 mark. And at that point, we'd only had like, I want to say like 3 or 4 blocks together going into Nats. But I told him, hey man, let's just keep getting more talent. We're getting things more refined. And now to be at that 840 mark with weight left in the tank, and you smoke that last deadlift, it's like everyone keeps leveling up, right? So what makes it interesting is even though right now Bornstein is clearly like in the lead, it's still a thing where, and Joe knows this, I can't miss 1 or 2 lifts. You know what I mean? You got, because to show up and have that big total, you can't afford to be missing big, right? Especially something like his deadlift or his bench. You definitely can't afford to miss those. That's where he takes such a big lead over the others. But right now, I mean, I think it's crazy because I think he is undeniable. I mean, just flat out, he's the strongest 83 right now, right? And when you account for the fact that the other people who say they're going to switch, and Sean Noriega, you got, Sean Jensen, he might still come back down to 83. So it's such a deep weight class at this point, which is just absolutely insane. And I think it makes it exciting because it's no longer just a matter of, I mean, look, we've even saw like what ESPN announced a couple years ago where Russ, didn't have his best meet and still won. You know what I mean? It's just so cool when you see a class where it's like, man, none of y'all can really afford to miss or make a mistake. Even the one who is far ahead in the league. But as far as what Joe's comments were about, um, will Russ ever win another world title, all kind of stuff, like anything can happen. But I can't say that, oh, he's tripping for saying that. Cause I mean, you came out and hit 5 kg over his best. And the thing we have to account for too is Russell's 860, I believe, was with a turnover squad that was turnover in his favor too. So even the judging on the day can make a difference for how something does or doesn't play out, right? But I have a lot of respect for judges because it's like, besides him bouncing back 10 weeks later from his back injury, I know part of it was he got a depth call in his third squad, right? And you can say it was bad call, not a bad call, whatever at junior Nats. But instead of complaining about it, he was just like, I'm gonna be undeniable. I will not forget when they were all warming up and I see Joe doing his warms. I see how deep he's squatting. I was like, my man said, I'm not letting the judges take anything from me today. And I love that. I love that type of mentality. Instead of like, because so many clients, they'll be like, well, that was just a bad call for the day. I'm going to just keep doing the same thing and hope the call's better next time. No, bro, don't even leave it in their hands. And that's what he did. So it was a spectacular performance. Just as his friend and a fellow lifter, I thought it was awesome. And I think the way the landscape has shifted so heavily is crazy. I think, like you said, just a few months ago, it's this thing where it's like, oh, Russ has got it. Like, no one's going to beat him. He's not going to have to try that hard. And then Jurins beats him. And now he gets flat out total by a junior. It's just, it's you never know what's going to happen with powerlifting. That's why whether you're a coach or a lifter, you have to always be working as if though you're behind, even if you're ahead. Because if you don't, like Austin touched on, if you don't, that's how people catch you. I think it was, I can't remember if it was on your podcast, but I think even Joey himself was saying like, hey man, look, if we would have expected this from Jurins, I would have had Russ come in like a week early just to avoid flight delays and this and that. And I was really paying attention to this because his past few meets he was doing this and that. But that's an example of what I mean, where I say like you can't get past it. Because for me, it was funny. I'll never, you can ask Pitre about this. You had a few people from the Australian teams. I'll sit next to them. But as Russell and Jurins were going, after each attempt, because I like to do this as kind of like skill practice for myself. I'll say out loud what I would give them, but then I'll say what I think they're going to put in based off what I see from their training and stuff like that. I kid you not, like so many ways that me and Pitre called every single number of Russ and Jurins correct before they put it in. Because I actually watched Jurins and Jurins training. And it was this thing where, if Russ came in at like 860 strength or something like that, then I still think he had it. But when Russ missed that third squat, man, like when that got taken from him, I was like, oh, this is about to be interesting. Because I know what he's going to bench. Based on something like that, I know how things are going to go in bench. But for me, when it was really like, in my mind, I said it last I said, oh, it's Jurins' day, was on their opening deadlifts. The reason being is, like I said, I study people. I know what Russ's deadlifts look like when they're on. And I've never seen Jurins' deadlift look like that on the platform. I've seen it look like that sometimes in training, but I've never seen it look that way on the platform. So when I saw their openers, I was like, this is Jurins at this point. It's his to lose depending on it because Russ's deadlift isn't on the way it is. Jurins is. But even when you're thinking that and you're saying that, when it actually happened, man, it was crazy. But it's one of those things where it's like, once again, you can't just go based off of, oh, well, this is how someone's always showed up on the platform. You got to pay attention to the training. Are things training up? Because I've never seen Jurins look that good in training either. Like his whole prep. I'm just like, because he's had good preps before, right? He has. But then he's dropped the ball on meet day. But I've never seen him look this sharp in a prep as far as exposed. I was like, man, because it's not just him having good blocks. He seemed consistently to be trending up. And I just remember being like, man, I don't know. Like it doesn't matter. Like I said, like if Russ can get all this he needs, if he shows up 860 strong, it doesn't matter. I didn't think Jurins was showing up for 860 at the time. But I was like, but if Russ isn't at that point, and that's where like you can't leave anything to chance, right? And I get it. Like I said, to your point, it's like, hey, Russ has been at the top for a long time. He's had this huge spread. It's easy to get the point where like, hey, I got this. But you just don't ever want the thinking, I got this, to be the reason you don't got it. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, man, get there early, be on top of everything. And then I think a big part of it too, like, to be fair, is also, Russ went so long without being on the platform, right? And then he came back on the platform and then had to do those two meets back to back, when typically Russ wasn't doing meets back to back like that. So there's probably different aspects that go into with that as well. But the point is, I'll put it this way. there was a lot of people who were so sure, like, tell us like, oh man, Ashton's got him in the bag, he should be good, blah, blah, blah. Me and Ash were like, no, we are looking at it as though Anatoly is showing up healthy and they're going to be the strongest version of himself. We had no reason based off his training to necessarily assume that was going to be true, but it's like, he seems like he's healthy, and that is enough for us to be like, we have a battle. We need to show up smart. We need to show up sharp. We can't be passive about anything, right? You just can't afford to be. And even with Bobb, right? Of course, Bobb being, like the lighter lifter that he was, you could say like, oh, well, the others are heavier. But on paper, everyone's like, oh, Bobb should have this, Bobb should have this. No, man, we are going up against people for first of all, seasoned, right? Because Ashton hadn't been on the world stage in years. It was Bobb and Pitre's first time being on the world stage. I am not going to come in here with this mentality of like, oh, well, our total is this, so we've got it. No, I'm going to assume that everyone's going to be showing up beyond the best they've ever done. And if you account for it that way, you will make sure you cover every possible variable. Where guess what? If you come in there over prepared because the others didn't show up as well as you thought, there's no loss there. But there's always risk if you come in under prepared. Always. So that's the mentality that I try to think about and I try to use. It's like, Marcellus, okay, you got some world champions on your belt now. You got people that done this, that, and the third. Cool. But don't get complacent. Don't ever think they can't be beat. Don't ever think that there's not someone that could be on their tail, especially when there's some people who don't show their training at all. You don't know if they're not showing their training because it's going horribly or because it's going so well. They don't want you to have any clue what to expect. Like, at the end of the day, your lifters only get as strong as what they're going to be on the day, but at least make sure that every variable in your favor is accounted for. You have to do that. Otherwise, you can get caught, man. And I don't think you can afford to do that in any weight class. Like, honestly, like everything's just too close. It's too close. Like I said, with the 83s, the 93s, of course, and that's the best way I can put it. Everybody, because of how close the 93s were, right? You would expect for me to be temperature. You got to be on top of A, B, and C. You got to be on top of all of this, right? But the same energy that I was giving Pitre that whole prep, I was doing the same thing with Ashton and Bobb. Because in my mind, it doesn't matter what it looks like. In my mind, your battle is just as close as theirs. Even if it's not actually, that's the way I need you to approach this. Because if you don't, if you get passive, and bro, Anatoly showed up strong.
Dude,
he's out squatted Ashton that day. You know what I'm saying?
Dude.
So it's like that you can't. But the thing is, when that happened, guess what? I will never forget everyone being like, "Oh my gosh," getting all freaked out. I was very calm. Matt Gary was calm. Ash was calm because we came and expected, hey, Anatoly might be very on. We're not coming in thinking it's going to be an easy walk in the park. You can never have the mentality at that level. You just can't.
To your point, well, we'll double back to the threes in a sec, but to your point about Anatoly, his squat jumped up, his bench jumped up. If his deadlift had moved within reason, I'm talking 350, 355, Ashton would be at his very top end deadlift, the very top end PR deadlift. He would have needed to empty the tank on his deadlift to win. Mm-hmm. And as the battle was unfolding, I was talking to Pete Spence in between. He's messaging me saying, dude, I'm crunching numbers here. If Anatoly hits even just what he's previously hit, Ash is now at his top end as well. They're both going to max out on deads. Now, Anatoly he ran out of steam come deads, but to what you're saying with, we couldn't take for granted, Ash might have been right to the line, top end deadlift that he's ever pulled, doing it at Worlds now for the world title. You can't sleep. You can't sleep on any of these guys. God bless. And Ash was in top form. So if the battle ensued, he'd be ready. You guys, and as it turned out, Anatoly's deadlift didn't arrive with him. Okay, fine. So be it. But you guys were ready for that and almost had that.
Yes. Here's the thing. Going into, I remember being on the call with Gary, we were really calculating, hey, you know what? As far as the squat, y'all might be a little bit closer than expected. He might be higher than what we expected to be. We know he's going to outbench you. And for our deadlift, even though we didn't have to push it, we had a plan for, hey, if we need to pull this, do it. Because we were like, you just don't know. Now, imagine if we had the mentality of like, oh, you know what, we'll just, Anatoly came off injured last time. He's not going to be close to our squat. We'll just squat this, and we'll cruise on the bench. And then we're like, that could have thrown things off so much if we would have had Ashton squat less than what he did. Exactly. You can never, it doesn't, if anything, I think the mentality, and I think we'll start to see this now more because of what happened with Russ and other people. I think the mentality will shift from being like, hey, I'm at the top so I can chill, to being more like, I'm at the top. I have the most to lose. So I have to be locked into every single thing. Because that's how it has to be, man. It's too, because man, listen, let's be real. You could have the perfect prep. you had the perfect prep, your travel could be uninterrupted, like perfect flights, good sleep, eating, everything. And you can get a random cramp on the day. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. I'm not saying to get to a point of paranoia where you try to like account for all these random variables, but I am saying you need to come in with a plan, expecting your competition to be beyond their best. So that way, if they are, you're ready for it. If they're not, cool. Your plan still holds solid. That I'm a very big believer, and that's how we should approach these things. Otherwise, you're leaving something to chance that you don't necessarily need to. So yeah.
So I want to talk about Ash and Bob in a sec, but let's refocus for a minute on the 83s before we move on, because something that's very interesting to me now. Okay, first off, yes, we still have two-time world champ Delaney, cannot overlook him. Chris Perez, your athlete, insane what he's been doing under your tutelage, and 840, it's insane. Like the Angelo, a big jump up in total as well. These guys are all killing it, and several others, like you said, Sean Noriega might come over, etc. So 83s are as hot as they've ever been. And of course, and a Haro can't, I mean, God, it's amazing. It's great to watch. But let's focus for a second here, because you could do 3 hours just on the 83s. Let's focus for a second here on the top three. We have Joey B, who at 21 has the biggest total ever in the 83 kilo class, 865. We have Jurins Kingamu, who is the reigning world champion, who just defeated Russ. And he could look at Joey B and say, my friend, great, you did 865. Russ did 860. I still beat him. Russ, like, I appreciate the fact that you're very high on yourself doing 865. But if you're expecting that to intimidate me, my friend, I've faced something just 5 kilos below, and I had more than 5 kilos in me at the end of the day. So,
I mean, he proved it a week later.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. So to Jurins, he's like, come and get some, young man.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. I will not go silently into that dark night. I get it. I'm 35, you're 21. Eventually you'll get me. Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. That's the attitude Jurins has to have. Every time he shows up, yeah, you're 14 years younger than me. You're going to get me at some point. Not today. Every day he has to tell himself, but not today. And that's a whole inspirational story in and of itself, and why Jurins is a great character in this story. But then there's Russ, whom he didn't have the greatest day. He's leaving this telling himself, I can live to a world standard. I done it before, and I can do 865. I think I could do, I could do 860. I think I could do more than 860. When I left the platform after 860, I felt like I had more. So he's looking at it as 865. I got you, young man, but I can do more than that too. You're 5 kilos ahead, which is a bench attempt, and I've got more in the tank. And then for Jurins, like I'm sure whatever he was doing leading into Worlds, I know he was prepping, but him and the rest of the world too probably thought, even Jurins thought, these guys are vying for second. Jurins himself said, I didn't think I was vying for gold until deadlifts rolled around. I'm like, holy shit, what am I pulling? Why am I pulling so much?
Yeah.
And Jurins said on the day of, he's like, holy fuck, I'm pulling for this is actually going to happen. Yeah. And probably the rest of the world too. I don't know if Russ got caught lacking or what the hell is going to happen, but to an extent, there's also that fire that we've seen in movies and for real in athletes, where it's like, all right, now you want to see me drop the hammer? You want to see what it looks like when I put my foot on the gas? And what does that look like?
Oh, yeah.
Now we have, so there's 3 storylines that are very exciting, and they're going to emerge.
Jurins unlocked the 83 kg class. Like, straight up. I truly, like, yes, everyone's already been doing their thing. Like, me and Chris have been doing our thing since PLA Nats regardless. But I'm telling you, I know this because the reaction that Chris gave me, right? Because that's my client. The reaction that my client Suin gave me, the reaction that Sean Noriega is my client as well. Now, like, the reaction they all gave me after that happened, you could tell the fire was unlocked. It was like, 1, Russ can't be beaten, and 2, the total that did it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, I'm capable of that. I can do more than that. Jurins unlocked the class for sure. And I think even Joe talked about that. Morrissey talked about that, how, like, seeing what the total was that won and being like, I'm capable of that. I gotta prove that. You know what I mean? He definitely unlocked the class and doing what he did. And I think like I said, I'm not at this point of like,
oh yeah, Russ's time is done and blah blah blah. Bro, this might lit a fire in Russ that puts him on a whole nother level. You just don't know. You don't know, right?
Hmm.
And it's interesting because of course, I know you guys do your polls and stuff. You have ultimately like, oh, who's the best 83 right now? Here's the go. And there's so many ways to go at it. Like if you want to look at it as like who's the GOAT 83, then you can probably still get that to Russell because it's like, okay, he still objectively has the most like accolades and titles, right? As far as that. But if you want to say like, oh, well, Jurins had the best world performance so far that we've seen in the weight class, right? You say that. Or you could be like, yeah, but at the end of the day, our sport's about who lifts the most weight, and objectively, Borson has lifted the most weight, right? So there's lots of different ways to look at it. There's no argument that Borson is the strongest 83 right now. That's just objectively so on paper. But as far as like you said, the storylines and what they all have to kind of prove, it's interesting, man. I know it probably can't happen because he did that a little bit. Man, I wish I could see Borstein at Sheffield. Man. I would pay money out of my own pocket to make that happen, bro. Like I would love that. Would be crazy. And I'm saying that knowing that would also make it harder on my guys at Sheffield. I would want to see that, man. Like that would be like Russell and Jurins and Joe together would be crazy. And it's unfortunate because it's like something like a Sheffield is the only way we could ever really see that, simply due to the fact that only one of our guys can go to wins, right? So yeah, no, it's definitely really interesting in regards to that. And I don't know, man, because I mean, even looking at the rematch between Jurins and Russ, it's like we can say, okay, well, Russ has more time, he's got a fire under him, but Jurins is basically in his backyard. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't have to worry about traveling like that. And we already saw what he could do a week after Worlds for not having as big of a travel. This time he's traveling even less than that. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be cool to see it. And ultimately, like I think what's cool about it is no matter which one of them wins or shows up, we all get the benefit of knowing that this class is going to continue to just get pushed and evolve because the barriers keep getting broken through. Especially for the people, who are kind of like more like in that middle path, like Chris and Anthony. Like, there's no way you would look at a junior like Bornstein and see what he's doing, or look at someone who's older than you, like Jurins, and see what he's doing, and not immediately go, "I got it better. I can't be better." So it's interesting. It's interesting. It's hard to say on like right now. There wasn't through a battle like who I would bank on for sure. But I'll say this, even though, yeah, it was at a local meet, but just due to the standard in which he did all the lists, I think it'd be hard for me not to favor Morrison. Because it's like, you did that, and now where are you going to be a few months from now? And not just based off this one meet, because that's what I don't like. I don't like when people go do things based off one meet, but consistently, if we account for the exception of him getting hurt at junior nationals, right? He consistently makes progress, meet to meet to meet, back to back to back. And he's only going to have more time to sit in this heavier weight class. So, I mean, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. 865 is, I mean, think about it. Like we said, 860 was already so nasty, right? And he did 5 keys over that. So, yeah.
It's interesting, too, about Joe, because while we've had relatively recent the success of Evie Corrigan moving down a weight class, I got the Shitco moving down a weight class. These lifters, there's more moving down a weight class and all of a sudden having a second life and just exploding the weight class below and people getting all excited from that. But then Joe Bornstein can be used as a data point for someone who moved up a weight class and exploded. And so it's not as cut and dry as people think. And to that point, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but Russ could always move up. He did at 90 kilos, 885. Who knows what the future looks like? There's too many storylines at 83 to leave 83 right now when it's so hot. Obviously he's going to do Sheffield and we're going to have that, but we'll see how that progresses. But let me ask you this, because I found this interesting. I had Jurins on the podcast and I said, my friend, you beat Russ head to head at Worlds and now it's in your backyard at Sheffield. 2,000 plus screaming fans are all going to be Brits. And you were there at Worlds. The Brits are loyal to each other. They got each other's backs. The support they get is insane. Endurance right now has to be the golden boy for all of Britain, Team Britain. Like he's the guy. He's got to be the guy.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in Sheffield, their backyard. The amount of Brits, they're going to go nuts for him. He won in a head-to-head. And I said, this is very unusual now for you to be the favorite at this top end, because previously there was always someone else and Jurins was the underdog. It takes pressure off. It's on the other guy. The favorite walks in with all the pressure. Every time Russ hits the platform, there's pressure like crazy because he's Russ. Now the shoe's on the other foot. And I said, you're the favorite. You won last time. It's in your backyard. You're the guy. Russ is now an underdog. And now all the question marks are on Russ. Wow, does he squat high? If we take out high squats and are to world standards, is he going to get that big of a squat? Or is that only domestically we're going to see 865? Are we never going to see all these questions about Russ? Can he do this? Can he? Now there's question marks all around Russ. And like, if he's at that body, has he outgrown it? Should he move up a weight class? Is he going to be the same guy in the gym is on the platform? All these questions now about Russ. It sounds like an underdog. And when I pose that to Jurins saying, and you know, I mean, this is going to fuel Russ, obviously. Great. That's amazing. But when I posed that to Jurins and said, so how do you feel now? The shoe's on the other foot. And all of a sudden, you're the favorite. Russ is an underdog. And Jurins stopped me and said, I'm still the underdog. Russ is still the favorite. I'm like, well, that's interesting. And I'm not sure if athletes got to get in the right mind frame. Some people don't want to be the favorite. Some people legitimately are, let him carry that. Let me be the underdog. Far less pressure as the underdog. I operate better. I'm motivated that way. Randy Couture, like, again, MMA, forgive my MMA references all the time, but he said he was always an underdog. He was in his 40s winning world titles, so he always would be. Even if he's a champ defending, he's like, I'm an underdog. People are like, do you find that disrespectful that you're always the underdog? He goes like, I operate better as. Thank you very much. Let that other guy have all the pressure. If I lose with a gallant effort, I still win. I get moral victories as an underdog. I can't lose.
Yeah.
And Jurins said, if I vied for second at Worlds and I got silver and I just pushed Russ and people thought it was closer than they anticipated, I would have had a moral victory. I would win no matter what. You can't lose. Some people, it's most people like operating under that. I get that. But do you think, in your estimation, Jurins is an underdog or the favorite now?
It's a good question. It's hard for me to call Russell an underdog. It's kind of more like what they're doing with the Sheffield predictions, where it's kind of like, oh, hey, who's more favored percentage-wise or something like that. It's kind of easy for me to kind of view it that way versus calling Russ. Because I think, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, psych-analyze him, but this would be my assumption maybe why Jurins feels that way. The first one is going into Worlds, he wasn't even expecting it, right? It wasn't to that last deadlift where because in his mind, he expected Russ to come in at like, you know, maybe like 850, 860, right? So I think you weren't even going into the competition with this thought expectation of winning. So it's hard to shift yourself from the underdog mentality. And then two, even though you did win, it's like, okay, but Russ has still hit a bigger total than what I have, right? On the platform, if not the world level. And he's got this many titles, this many accolades, right? So I can see why in his mind, he would still view himself as the underdog for that reason, regardless of where the meet's at, the landscape, all that. I can see that. And then to your point, maybe it's more beneficial for him to not even put that pressure on himself, right? Being like, hey, Russ is still this juggernaut. And maybe for him, it has to be more than a one-off, right? Like, I feel like if he wins at Sheffield, then he can be like, no, I'm him, I'm the favorite. I can't call myself the underdog in the world. I didn't win once, I won twice, right? But as far as, you know, and just but as far as like, do I think just based off what's going on in the hearing now for this particular meet, even if I don't know if I would call Russ an underdog, I guess by default it would be called that if I say that I think Jurins is the thing. Just because at the end of the day, we can look at all the past stuff all as much as we want, but once we said the landscape is changing. At this point, regardless of what Russ has or hasn't done, and I'm not taking away from any of that. Like I said, if you ask me who's the GOAT 83 still right now, it's still Russell. I said that, Bornstein says that, I think that stands as of right now, right? But because Jurins has had the best performance so far on the world stage, because he did beat him on the world stage, and because now you're going to a place where it's the same type of strict judging as the world stage, but it's also your backyard, your people there in droves, loving the support. I mean, that was already one of the craziest things was every country, including some Americans, like the amount of like how crazy it was for Jurins at Worlds itself on that last pool. Now imagine that, and it's like the entire freaking audience. So I think it'd be crazy for me to say that he's not the favorite. because I feel like just the amount of support he's going to have and just what the current landscape is, I think he is the favorite, right? But like I said, it's like a percentage thing. It's not like, that's why I say use the term underdog for Russ is crazy, because when I hear underdog, it's almost like, oh, there's no expectation for him to win, right? But of course he can still win, right? So, but if I'm using the terms relative to each other as far as favorite and underdog, I think Jurins is the favorite. I think it's hard to say he's not right. Not only because he won, but because it's like, okay, you won and he came back a week later. Granted, a little bit overweight, right? But I think he's going to make it, right? A week later and hit 10 kilos more. So that's another way we can look at it too, right? Because of course we can look at Russell's 860, right? But if we look at Russell's world performance in terms of the relative progression made worlds to worlds, there's a certain kind of steady like pace to it, right? Whereas Jurins, man, you did what you did, and then a week later you hit 10 kilos more. So it's like, where are you going to be by January in Sheffield? You know what I mean? So, and then it's also like, when you think about like how heavy each person walks and the cut and stuff like that, I think there's a lot of odds that are in Jurins' favor this time around, to where it's hard to say he's not the favorite.
And well, first off, yeah, and I know like the term underdog, some people aren't comfortable with it, but legit, like you said, one's a favorite, the other one is automatically the underdog.
Yeah.
What we got to get used to is, because I remember saying, like I was telling some Brits, like for sure, Jurins was the underdog, and that was an upset victory.
Yeah.
And people like he was the underdog, but it wasn't an upset. And I'm like, no, excuse me,
100%.
that's what that means.
Yeah, 100%.
Wins.
What do you mean?
Yeah. And people just aren't. It's like, are you not a sports fan? Do you not follow sports? That's how it works. That's what so
Yeah.
I think what people gotta get used to is you can have a slight underdog and a slight upset win. A
Yeah.
minimal upset win. It was an upset, but a slight upset. People
Yeah.
gotta get used to these terms because these are normal terms we use in sports.
Yeah.
And I think some powerlifting fans are sports fans. And when I talk as a commentator or podcaster saying, well, he's an underdog, but a slight underdog. That was an upset win, but a slight upset win. It wasn't a big upset. But people people hear upset and they're like, well, who's upset? What do you mean upset? It's like,
Yeah. Like we're not saying people are upset that Jurins won. We're saying that
I know
we weren't expecting it. Yeah. No, bro. Look, you should be like, dude, I was there. I know no one was upset that he won. I was there. I saw the crowd.
yeah. Like, homie, relax. Like, but anyways, yeah, it's going to be interesting the way this unfolds, and I'm unsure. Well, we're going to have to take a look at how the training goes with these two individuals. Joe Bornstein came on the podcast, and when he was on his episode, he said something also interesting that I'm tinkering with, but I need to know how the training ends up. But he said Russ is a bit of an in-betweener with his weight, and at a lower body weight, if he sustains lower body weight too long, it might impact strength. So then maybe being heavier, coming down, hit 860. And then if he was heavier, came down, and he had more time in between worlds and nats. But if he stayed down, the training weight might go down. So then when he rolled into worlds, it wasn't so much taking his foot off the gas, but the training weight had to come down because the body weight was down. So the stimulus on his nervous system. So he hypothesized there wasn't a lot he could have done in that scenario.
Yeah.
The difference between Worlds in Sheffield, he has an opportunity to gain a little weight, increase the stimulus, and maybe come back down. Maybe we see a more of a return to the 860 form. Or if Worlds made him and his team rethink things and be like, no, we're going to stay lighter. Maybe maybe they're chasing the wrong direction. No, maybe you shouldn't stay lighter. Maybe the cut is fine. Redo the Nats performance and be heavier. But again, we're on the outside looking in, so we don't necessarily know. This is all conjecture, like sports fans do. But it was a hypothesis that Joe threw out. I found was interesting. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what the body weight and the cuts were specifically. I know Russ had mentioned, but I can't fully remember now. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be. Here's the thing: when you take a loss, sometimes you analyze, sometimes you overanalyze. Sometimes you're like you could go down the wrong pathway, and you're like, well, hang on, maybe the body weight, maybe staying light isn't a problem. Maybe you kind of want to be bigger. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't, it's very difficult, man.
I 100% agree with him. And I've had talks with other people about this in general, not just in relation to Russ, but in general. I said it's a balance. It's one thing if you're like sitting heavy over weight class just due to unnecessary body fat, right? But Russ is, very lean, very jacked dude. So it's kind of this thing where it's a balance. I think at that point you do get an advantage from letting yourself sit heavier over the weight class for sure, especially when you have the time to cut down appropriately to yourself. The problem is there's diminished returns. How heavy are you letting yourself sit over the weight class? And like I said, I don't know. But I think the issue, you run into problems if you go to either extreme. When you're that lean, as Russell is, right? Like, you see what he looks like when he's that weight, right? If you're that lean, you're only letting yourself walk around like 2-3 pounds over, your training's not going to go as well. You're not going to recover as well. You're not going to be able to produce the same workloads. You're not going to get the same type of stimulus. You're not going to get as strong as quickly either, right? On the opposite end of that, when you let yourself sit too heavy above the weight class, right? Let's say for sake of argument, let's say most people, I can sit like 8-ish, 9 pounds of the weight class. Well, now you let yourself sit 10, 12, 15, however much weight over the weight class. Like I said, we don't know. But let's say you're sitting that heavy weight class. You're going to feel great in training. You're going to feel really strong. But the problem is the carryover that is not going to hold the same way as you drop down the weight, drop down the muscle mass, and you're not going to feel the way you need to. So it's that balance of, hey, sit heavy enough to where you can recover well, push the training a little bit harder, but it's a pretty smooth cut to where we're going to hold on to most, if not all of this, right? Be within that, like, maybe be only like 2-3 pounds over like your gut to water cut range, right? And then we get closer, drop those 3 pounds to be within that gut to water cut range, and then go from there. That's what I like to have a lot of my clients do, because otherwise, if you get too heavy, you're not going to get that carryover effect that you want. You're going to have these inflated numbers, right? And then what that can do for a lot of lifters mentally is they have these numbers thinking, I have to hit this on the platform, be close to this. But it's like, bro, these numbers are inflated. You're 15 pounds heavier than what you're on the platform, right? But then what they'll do, like you said, they overanalyze, okay, now I got to walk around lighter. Well, no, now you're too light, you're too lean, you can't build the work capacity the way you need to. So I think it's finding that balance. And either way, if they do that, I think Russ will definitely be better set up this time because he has the time for January. Whereas, because that was the big thing that I was thinking too, and that's part of why, even though a lot of people are speakers, why I was saying like, well, it's possible depending on how things go at Russell Squats, because I said, yeah, the 860 was huge, but now he doesn't have time to get back heavier again and cut back down. He's going to have to kind of stay lighter going into Worlds. And if you're not used to that, right? Because who's to say, hey, if Russ does let himself stay lighter, he can just get used to it and build some capacity, sure. But at this point, you've built so much of your capacity sitting heavier because you had a whole year off. It's hard to have the body bounce back and forth. So in my mind, what makes most sense is kind of stick to what you've been doing. Let yourself sit heavier, maybe not too heavy, but a little bit heavier, and just be within a nice cutting range because you now have the time to do that. Because I think if he doesn't do that, then once again, like I said, I already think Jurins is the favorite, but you're giving more cards into Jurins' hands because Jurins does walk around closer to weight than Russell does as far as they know. So I definitely agree with Joe as far as that. I definitely think that plays a big role with it. And everyone's different, man. Some people can walk around super light and lean and just be good, but others, it's like you need to take advantage of every opportunity you've got. If you train better, a little bit heavier, and you can cut down appropriately, do that.
100%. I think sometimes it's okay to get rattled by an L because L's are going to come in life and they're not a bad thing. Look, you can't walk around in life operating like it's a video game where you turn off, you put on what they call God mode, where like you never take L's, and you just you actually don't want life like that, and you'll learn nothing from it. This is a journey of learning, and so it's okay to take an L. It's okay to take lessons from it and recalibrate. Just don't overcorrect. And we know another part is Russ at 90 kilos put 885. So it's Russ, from what the numbers tell us, you were the biggest, strongest guy in the room. Between the three of you, even, you're the biggest, strongest guy in the room. None of them else have been 90 kilos and hit 885. You just need to figure out how to bring, you aren't going to get 885 on the platform, but you need to figure out. And if you're walking around too light all the time and super diced, Joe's like, what does that do to your point? Recovery, but even your hormones, everything gets off when your body fat goes too low. If you carry that low body fat for too long, what does that look like? And so there's a lot moving around. If nothing else, Russ knows I'm the bigger, stronger man of the three. How do I bring that on a platform and not overly mitigate that 885? Let's say 885 is my top end. It might be more than that at this point, but if we'll put it at 885, how do I bring that on? And is staying too lean, too light? These are things, they got time. They got time. Just you got to be calm and don't overcorrect. Don't take it
Yeah.
easy.
Well, it's like
Don't
we said,
retool everything.
yeah. Well, it's like we said with programming, right? Where do coaches go wrong? They make these drastic changes instead of one small change at a time. It's the same thing with this. If what you've been doing consistently has worked, which for him consistently has been sitting over the weight class, right? And that's consistently worked. Don't let one loss make you think that's no longer the answer. Maybe it's just okay, you know what? You don't need to get this heavy. Still be heavier, but don't get this heavy. Don't go this long without getting down used to it. But don't go. I don't think doing a full, I don't think doing like a 180 is gonna be the answer. Yeah,
That's right.
For sure.
Don't get rattled. Stay in the pocket. It's okay to get first time in years. It's okay to get a little rattled, but cooler heads prevail as time moves forward. Let's talk a bit about talking about weight and everything. Bob Matthews, 105, basic 105 and small change, competing in the 120s. And I loved when I had Bob and Ash on the podcast. It was phenomenal leading into it live, those going into the world championships. And then Bob putting in the comments before, it was like the day before, and he was like, don't get clapped by a 105. And he said that to all the 120s. And I was like, God damn, that was a fire quote. But he was a 105. He wasn't playing. He was 105 and change, won the 120 kilo class. You were saying earlier, you can't take anybody for granted because you know what happens when that you miss one lift and oh my God, the door swings open. There are some monster 120s. Etienne from Lebanon. He didn't have the day he wanted, but he showed the horsepower is there. That deadlift is crazy.
That deadlift on the third was insane. Yeah.
When he has the day he wants, it could be scary. He could be a Jurins. So you guys were right in that. Let's not take anything for granted. He didn't have that day, but he's a junior. He's going to at some point. But with Bob now saying, hey, look, I think I'm going 105 for Sheffield, which is obviously a good idea. I think now, let me get your thoughts on this. I think now Bob is probably the favorite for Sheffield. Herc on here said, I think Bob probably is the favorite for Sheffield, but I am a live underdog and it's close. Probably right there as well. I could agree with those odds. And then we have Ashton, whom he's saying, hey, look it, I think I'm the favorite for Sheffield. And he tinkered with, and I don't know if you have the update on this. Maybe you guys haven't landed on a decision, but he was contemplating before Worlds dropping to 93 for Sheffield. And he thinks, my God, if the world record is 895, I can drop down to 93 and my total might come down, but not that much. I not only would explode the 93 world title or world record, but I think I could win Sheffield. So now we have variables moving around all over the place. And holy smokes, if the 93s weren't super hot, Ashton enters the field. I don't even know. And even if he doesn't go down, he stays 105. Him and Bob head to head. Ashton said on the podcast too, hey, excuse me, last time we clashed, I won. Anything can happen on the day. I know we're all super high on Bob and we should be, but let's not overlook me. To a point, he is kind of being overlooked to an extent because we're so high on Perk, we're so high on Bob, and Ash is like, dude, are you guys overlooking me? Maybe if he moved to 93, I think immediately he's part of the conversation up there. If he moves to 93, what are we talking about? He might be the favorite again as well. I don't know. I'm throwing a lot out there, but.
Well, I've got some submission news on both fronts for you. You're probably gonna get some sound bites. So the first thing is Bob means 80-20 on doing Sheffield and it's 80% on not doing it. So that's the first thing that should probably be thrown out there.
What, sorry?
So he's 80-20 on doing Sheffield. He's 80% not doing it.
Not?
Yes, 80% not doing it, 20% doing it. Yes.
Why?
Yes.
What happened?
Yeah. So for him, because here's the thing. Well, I'll start back at Worlds, right? Because obviously the whole thing was like, this whole, we know how the whole series on this YouTube Don't Get Caught by 105 started. Tony was making these jokes and all that kind of stuff, and he responded well, but he wasn't actually planning on coming in that light. It was very similar to kind of what happened with Austin. So he was walking around like 107, 107.5 kg. This one is kg. Like we're like 235, 236, right? It was only posted traveling. And mind you, he was still eating the same calories. Like we went to the store together, you got all his food, all that kind of stuff. But despite eating the same calories, because the food volume is very different, the food obviously of Lithuania is very different than we have here in America, especially in terms of like sodium, how things are processed, that kind of stuff. Even though he's eating the same calories, his weight was dropping despite eating the same calories, to where he ended up at that like 105.5 or whatever it was of the day, right? But he didn't like the way he feels. So even though he had a great day, right, 9 for 9 and stuff like that, his numbers were a far cry from what he was wanting and expecting. His training was good. Now, a couple of those are things that we're kind of just realizing, like some stuff we can kind of tweak with the squat, as far as we don't really need to taper things with the squat. We can just push it normally because it just gets a lot of that response. But in general, he just knows that when he's lighter like that, he doesn't feel as strong as what he wants. And Bobb's longest term goals, right, are big feats of strength. He wants to bench 600 one day. He wants to be bodying 800 plus in the squats. He wants to 400 plus. He wants to have that showdown with Rondell. And he knows in order to do that, to set himself up as best as possible from now all the way to Worlds, when he will be facing Rondell, he needs to be as heavy as possible. So for him, it's like, okay, he's like, my best chance of winning Sheffield is as 105, absolutely. But that means I didn't have to hold back on continuing to try to gain weight and trying to build my strength up to the highest end, right? So he asked himself, for him, is it worth cutting down on 105 and intentionally not gaining the weight that I want to potentially win this meet, but then throwing myself off and kind of trying to gain some weight back again by Worlds, knowing that I will not be in the best spot to be Rondell. We already know that Rondell is the favorite in general if they go head to head. So he's like, I'm shooting myself in the foot for that. So then it's like, well, I could just do it as a 120, right? Because, you know, if I go in and I put up, say, like 1,000 at 120, yeah, that has me in the mix for top 50. But in his mind, it's like, but that's not going to be enough if Austin hits what he should be able to hit. And it's not going to be enough because he's, you know, he's fully confident in Ashton as far as being able to hit like 980 plus at 105. It's not enough. So he's like, so do I then go all the way to this meet, you know, pay out of pocket to fly again, travel, pay for the meet, all kinds of, do I do all that for something where I'm not, I don't win, right? Is it worth that when my main goal is Rondell? He said, if I don't do Sheffield and people say he's running away, he doesn't care about that. He said, but what he refuses to do is run away from Rondell, the actual challenge. Right.
Oh,
so for him, it's like my long-term goals and feats of strength and battling Rondell. He values that more than Sheffield. That's how he feels about it. That's why he's 80-20. The 20% is still there. And hey, who knows? Maybe, you know, if his strength keeps trending up the way he wants, he's getting heavier and stuff like that. And he can be around like, you know, like 240, like 108, 108.5 kg, like by Sheffield. If he feels like, man, I can do this to the total. And you know what? Nope, I think I'm right in there with Ashton now and Pert. Maybe he changes his mind, but right now, that's where he stands. And then for Ashton,
wait one sec.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Let's discuss this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love this. First off,
I knew you're gonna be shocked by this one. Yeah.
Talk. I gotta. Yeah. Okay. Process this. But okay. So I respect the fact that like every athlete has goals and whatnot, and for him to be, he's a big game hunter, and there might not be a bigger game out there to hunt than Rondell hunt. That wasn't a pun I intended, but worked out nicely. Frig, man, you could argue Rondell is the king pound for pound. You could. What's hurting him now is like he couldn't be at Worlds. Let's say he was at Worlds. Let's say he'd been, you know, he's missing these meets. But when Rondell came on the podcast late last year and said, like, I think I'm the pound for pound king, nobody did to their weight class what I did to the 120s, including Perk in the 74s. And we kind of were like, what? Then when you crunch numbers and look at it, it's like, my God, he's not wrong. What he did to the 120s is absolutely insane. So maybe he is the biggest game. Anyways, so I respect the fact that Bobb is like, listen, I'm the big game hunter. This guy's in front of me, and I want to go head to head with this guy. I got you. That's pretty good. But in terms of the Sheffield situation in not winning, I got that too. But I would say the same way Worlds after Worlds, and you look back, you're like, holy smokes, that was amazing. The feeling of it, the experience of it. I think, like, you're going to be at Sheffield anyways, but I think Bobb afterwards would be, well, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I think he would be like, holy smokes, I'm glad I was there. Even if I walked in there saying, hey guys, I'm not going to 105. 105, you take my numbers, you think I'm the favorite, but I'm going to show up. I don't want to lose this life experience. From like hanging out, the media, the banquet afterwards, Like the banquet at Sheffield is insane. People are dressed to the nines. The food, it's like, it is amazing. The banquet. It's like no banquet I've ever been to before. The atmosphere, everything, just in terms of life experience. Even if you showed up and just said ahead of time, I I am going 120 and I'm going to be a small 120 and don't look my way to be besting at perk now. But I'm not going to say no to this and we're going to do this. And in terms of like paying and all the rest of it, I get this. You know, I got that. But I got to think some sponsor will be involved. Yes, you're not going to have your gear on the platform for this, but all of the social media leading into all the YouTube, Instagram, TikToks, and everything, the exposure. Hopefully, somebody will be like, "Listen, if that's all it is, my friend, we will cover you. You go."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, well,
you
here's the
got to, you
thing.
got to
Here's
do
the
it.
thing, right? Because, like I said, as a coach, my job is not to tell him what his goals are or aren't. My job is to, hey, here's all the options. Here's all the things to consider and account for. So everything you just went over, we talked about all of that. I made it very clear to, hey, I support the decision what you're choosing to do. I made it all clear to him. And of course, that's why he's still 20%. There's still things to account for, some things I love. But what I can say is this with certainty. Bro, Bobb is different. Bobb
I know.
doesn't give a damn about any of that. He does not care. Bob, listen, more than like it's one thing we're talking about like millions of dollars or something, right? That'd be different. And of course, there's potential money to be made from even just records broken and this and that. But for Bobb, his biggest thing, right? His biggest motivator, even more than Rondell is like, I want to be the strongest Bobb I can. The strongest Bobb I can be is not 105. The strongest Bobb I can be is probably close to like 110, and like it's getting stronger. Like he's like everything he wants to work towards is that he wants to show up on the platform and have that type of day. Even though he knows he could do that at Sheffield, right? Like you can go and do your thing. For him, it's still a matter of like, but do I want an L on my record? Because he cares about it. He cares about looking at it. So it's one thing if it's an L against going up against like like Rondell, right? It's like, I'm not running from that. But something like this, where it's not so much a head-to-head in the sense of weight class, but it's based upon the specific formula, which is necessarily favor me this time around, blah, blah, blah. It's like, do I care enough about that? And he's decided. Right now, he 8% doesn't care about that. But like I said, like if it's up to me, I would love to have Bobb there. I would love to have Bobb and Ashton there. Absolutely. I think it's fun. And I agree with you. I think it'd be like, hey, man, it's one of those things we get to mark it off that you did this, you were here. It's another feather in your hat, if you will. But I also know that Bobb is just different. He's wired different. The things he thinks about, the things he cares about is different. So, we'll see what he decides. But just, because I told him before, I say, hey, man, I'm going to go and keep the list. If I'm going to ask about this, if I talk about it, it's like, oh, yeah, let him know. He's like, it's probably better that they know now versus later, last minute.
Right.
But yeah, that's where he's at with it right now. Like I said, maybe he changes his mind. I hope he changes his mind just because, like I said, man, anything can happen. You know what I'm saying? It could be something where someone messes up, slips up. Bobb has a great day. You never know. But whatever he chooses to do, I respect it because I get it. Like when he lays all of his reasons out to me and me knowing how he thinks, I'm like, no, it makes sense. It makes sense. I get why you're leaning towards the direction you are. So we'll see.
Bobb is fascinating. When you said Bobb is different, you're not lying. This
No,
dude
truly.
is entirely different. And I mean, we need guys like Bobb around. He's a fascinating individual. And you're right. Like your job is a coach. So you're like, let me go to your priorities. Here's the thing. My role as an influencer. Let me try to influence Bobb. Let me see what I can do.
Yeah, yeah.
But end of the day, whatever. We're gonna have some great showdowns, and it is what it is. I mean, it'll all work out. We'll see. And it is 80-20. People have ebb and flows in life, and maybe as the event gets closer and more hype comes, maybe he's like, you know what? I've gone back and forth with this. I'm sure once he makes his decision, it's on. And maybe he turns it around and says, hey, I didn't I wasn't in, but now I am. I'm putting my foot on the gas. And
Yeah.
Perk, you got a problem. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
But how about Ash then? Because this kind of now that's interesting. Now Ash is like, if I'm Ash, and you probably have insight on this as well, but if I'm Ash, I would be like, well, listen, man, if you're not cutting to 105, I'm staying 105 and let's see what the hell happens. However, my friend, you're 80-20. If you freaking make it if you change your mind, I don't need to cut to 105. I do need to cut. So for Ash, I'd be like, do I want to go 193 God, the 193s are super hot. My goodness, would that be a great, what can we say about this?
Ashton's staying 105. 93 is something where, after, because originally, like I said, I think I talked about this last one podcast. Originally for Ashton, it was like, hey, go to Worlds, go to Sheffield, World Games. And then at that point, he might be like, yeah, I might take a step back after, being in the game as long as I have been and doing everything I want to do. But now he's at a point where he may wish to continue. And if he does continue at that point, say like, whether it's going into World Games, after World Games, that's when he might account for like, going to 93, just because for lifestyle change and stuff, that's probably better for the long term. But the way we're looking at it right now is, we the goal for Worlds, even though we weren't at our strongest self necessarily, we came in really healthy, we left really healthy, and the goal was like, okay, we need to be fully 100% healthy again, so we can really just build back up to where we were, like USAPL Nats of last year, Ashton and beyond, right? And he's at that point now. It's the healthiest he's felt in a long time. He feels good. He feels strong. Got going for a program wise team with a really good response to. So for him, it's like it's less risk to just stay where he's at weight wise, and just build that total and come in and hit like that 980 plus range as a 105 versus trying to cut all the way down, maintain the health, maintain the strength. So it just makes the most sense. And even with Bobb, whether Bobb decides to come back or not, we think that's probably still going to set Ashton up for his best possible chance at placing top 3 outright. Will still be probably 105 for him right now, especially since we don't know what type of hit the strength takes, right? And beyond more than the strength, because even though I'm confident we keep strength up, it's like, okay, well, how healthy do you stay? How does the back feel, right? It's like when you've got this type of health and momentum, it's like, let's just keep riding that so we can show the best we can be. So that's where Ashton's at. Look at that.
That makes sense. I guess, like, yeah, you're right. Easy enough. You see other people doing these cuts and you start applying it to yourself. Be like, my God, what if I keep a good chunk of my total and I end up at 93? I will set the world on fire. However, that's taking all of the number one best case scenarios, which may or may not happen. But as it stands right now, you're a world champion 105. You got work that can be done and you're healthy. And if back issues have been coming and going, he's shifting incredible amounts of weight for a guy his size. And it's like, my friend, you get to a smaller frame and you're what? Are we cutting calories? Are we?
Yeah.
Things can happen to you. Let's not.
It's like if we cut to that, it has to be a very slow and steady type of thing, right? Even more time than what we have between now and Sheffield to try to keep performance high. So, it's something we can very much revisit, like after Sheffield, or most likely like after World, stuff like that, going to World Games. But right now, we're thinking that probably makes the most sense, especially since there typically aren't weight classes like that in World Games anyway, like to kind of do together. So it's something we can discuss then. But right now, Sheffield 105 makes the most sense for him. And we're just also, I know for Ashton, a big thing with him, kind of similar to Bobb, is Ashton's also big on like, I want to really see what I can do in my top 8 straight. And now that he's feeling healthy again, we can get back to that. So.
Let's talk about Pitre. So Pitre, first off, we're talking about embracing the moment. My man was out constantly at Worlds because I was side by side with him at most of these nights. There were nights it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, the sun's up, and a bunch of us are still out. And like Pitre was out and about, just loving life. I went to Silent Worker not too long afterwards. Pitre's there at Silent Worker. Like, he stayed in Europe. He like afterwards, he's like, man, this is like some of the best 2 to 3 weeks of my life. He loved his World's experience through and through. So maybe let's talk about this. He also was talking about a recent grip issue situation where he's like, and he's at Worlds somewhat dissecting what he think it might have been. And I think he was talking to one of the lifters. And the lifters, I can't remember the conversation now, but they were like, maybe this started happening. And I forget what it was now, but Pitre probably does anyways. But let's talk about his experience. Battle the 105, 93, sorry. Super tight, super close. Pitre's right there in the mix. Your thoughts on it, possibly the grip issues, if you guys have talked about it, and what you guys are tinkering with possibly, and his future. I know he's fired up in the 93s. Garrison, Juwan Garrison's coming over, and it's going to be, if Keiko comes back, Gavin conceivably is most likely going to be back, and like what this is all going to the USAPL Nats is going to be ridiculous, let alone Worlds all over again. Crazy. So yeah, tell me about that, your impressions on it, and afterwards as well.
Yeah, man. It was I mean, like we already knew out of everybody coming in, Pitre had the closest battle, just like on paper. We already knew that was the case. But it was great, man. I mean, it was his first world experience. Up and hit the PR on squats. Finally hitting the 700-pound range on squat. We've been wanting that for a while. We started off really big, really strong. It's great. Bench, we were having a little bit of issues as far as with him trying to set up, mainly just due to his hamstring. Something we were kind of dealing with going into the World's Prep was like his hamstring on one of his legs. So with setting up, he's kind of feeling that kind of cramp up on him a little bit. So I had the second not move quite the way we wanted. So of course, we looked to Matt and we was like, hey, let's go with the smart second call. Pitre agreed. Managed it for his third, looking like he moving it better than the second, looked like maybe had more, right? But hindsight is 2020. And then of course going into the deadlift, had the world title winning pool in his hands, just a few inches plus a lockout, and it's that moment where it's like everything slows down, right? Like especially watching the guys, everything slows down. You think he's got it, but it's just not quite there because, like I said, the grip. The main thing we found with the grip actually, because we tried a few technical things, but really it just came down to kind of like hand health and like taking care of his hands better. We realized that we got kind of passive with that in terms of like his calluses and everything like that. So once we kind of started like working on that, his grip seems to have been fine since then. Once we start to get to the heavy weight again, we'll see if that holds up. But we think a lot more of it was as simple as that because we're like, man, our tech's been fine overall. Like we haven't done anything crazy different with it. Like, we refined a few things, got back to a few old things, but we found that once we kind of got things adjusted with the handheld, that seemed to be a lot better for him. But with that being said, of course our goal is to go in there and win, but above all, we still want to place top 3. And for me, what I really wanted I wanted this to be a meet that really kind of like reignited Pitre, helping him find his love for the world, stuff like that. Because it seems like with every prep, he's gonna have to do a bunch of different life stuff back to back, and then he grows through it, he overcomes it, he matures. But it's just been a lot of stuff, and I think that definitely happened. Like you said, he was having a good time with all your teams, being out there, going to France afterward, and doing the silent worker meet, stuff like that. And he came back with the new mentality of like, all right, Marcellus, I know what I need to do, like to lock myself in as an athlete. I've been juggling and balancing a lot of stuff, but now it's time to kind of stop balancing some stuff, and I'm ready to focus in more on this and do what I need to do, what's best for me, put myself first in some scenarios. And he came back with a completely different mentality, and I'm really excited. We know he's capable of that matter. Plus, we've done it in training, but it's just a matter of being healthy, being locked in, being focused. And I think he's at a different level of motivation now because, similar, like I said, like having experienced something like that, I wasn't experienced before in the form empowerment league, really kind of reignited things for him as far as what he loves about the sport, regardless of some things he doesn't love as much. And it was a crazy type battle, man. I mean, like I definitely was not expecting the 895 that he hit at PLA Nats, or that Gustav hit at Sheffield, to also be what won it. And it's crazy. It almost became a 3-way tie where Pitre would have won on body weight had he gotten it. That was insane. I was not expecting.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's what it was. One of the other lifters was mentioning, is the bar being held in your hands the same? And then Pitre, I think that's what might have been, is like, maybe I'm not. And then to your point, yeah, you got to take care of your mitts. Otherwise, if it's not hanging in the bar the same, when you get up at the top, I think maybe that was a conversation. But anyways, yeah, super duper close. He ends up on the platform and ends up going to World Games and going to have an absolute blast at World Games as well. So he marches forward, and at least he punched his ticket on that anyways. And but the battle that lays ahead, man, 895 is the number. And to an extent, this is what happens. Sometimes you get a bottleneck at a certain number, and it's the way it plays out when you get to Worlds. Like Emil Krastev looked like he was cruising to a 905 win with it, and then the deadlift at the last second, shocking. Like as the day was progressing, it was like, oh my god, it looks like this could be Emil's. And then Pitre hit a PR squat. 10 days later, bested another PR at silent worker. Like things are firing for him. It's just on the day, anything's possible. I think all of those gentlemen at the top end at 93s are capable of 900 and up.
Absolutely.
It hasn't come to pass yet.
Yeah,
now
it's because they're all so close. I think it was on Ashton and Bobb when they were on the podcast with you before they competed at Worlds. Ashton brought this up, but it's what I try to explain to people too. I don't think it's not a lack of progress or a lack of strength or not having the strength to be the outlier, but when you're all that close, you can't necessarily just go in and just do what you want and have the day that you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you got to pay attention to what's going on. But it's also now getting to that point where they have to. Someone has to be the one that kind of breaks away from the pack. Otherwise, we're going to keep being in this like same, or we got to tie on body weight type of scope. So yeah.
It's easier said than done. It's easy to blow up a local meet, but when you're on the top end schedule where it's like Nats, Worlds, World Games, Sheffield, whatever the heck, squeezing in a local meet on top of that isn't always a great idea. Pitre had the opportunity to with Silent Worker, but it's not a little close. It's very close.
Yeah.
Still able to PR his squad. Now,
Yeah.
2020 hindsight, like to your point about, I mean, you could take risks at a local meet. Who cares? So at a local meet, he went 322.5 on his squad instead. If he was like, God, I didn't quite know I had 322.5 on me, but are you going to load that at Worlds? Like he could have, a couple of them probably could have put a couple kilos here and there.
Mhm.
And yeah, we probably could have
Mhm.
been over 900, but do that at Worlds. And
Mhm.
if you miss because you got a little greedy, now you move forward with just your second, and everyone's like, what were you guys thinking?
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
it happens
We
to you.
could have done 2.5 more in the third, but like he reported to Matt that he built the bar roller on a second. So it's like, okay, let's play safe with this PR. Same thing with the bench. We could have been like, well, you know what? Like without single leg, like let's just still still go up like 5 or whatever. Like, no, let's play it smart and do 2. And granted, it's like, oh, well, had he done 2 on the squat, and had he done 2 on the bench, you could have pulled less on the deadlift. That could have been the difference. But that's in hindsight, right? You got to make the calls based off what's going on right then and there. Because if you miss before the deadlift, you're already out of it. So, but well, like I said, I know Petre's fired up, and like I said, the numbers we talked about is like, hey man, it can't be this thing. 900 is not even the goal. Like it can't be. We have to get so brutally strong to where we can put something like that up on a 7 or 9. You know what I mean? Because it's just, we already know Emil's is going to keep getting better. Musa's going to keep getting better. Like I said, Juwan's coming over. So it's like, it truly is going to be a thing where it's like the class collective just going to get pushed together. Like what's happening with the 83s right now. That's what I think is going to end up with.
The big question mark for me is when Juwan comes over and we see what he ends up posting up.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole nother animal coming over to the IPF standards. First off, 2-hour weigh-ins, that shouldn't be an issue for him. He'll make 93. 83 would have been tough, but like was tough, he was saying. But 93, he should be good. But it's let's see what happens because his top end potential is phenomenal. But I mean, even within the IPF, from Nats to Worlds is a different ballgame, let alone from local meet to Nats. And then again, doing it at a local meet unopposed or doing it at a meet where everybody's there. And at Nats, Pitre, pretty sure Keiko, Gavin, all of these guys are 895 to 900 or up. So it's another ball game. It's
Yeah.
another freaking ball game. I talked to Pitre. He's confident. He's not. Look, they all should be, but he's by no means scared. He's like, all right, come on.
He's excited for it. He's ready for it. It was funny when Jamar was, we're at this video rally meet, and because he was there handling somebody as well, and Jamar, and we're talking about like, the squads like that, and Northwest came over and was like, yeah, man, it's good to see Jamar like in the class. I think it's gonna be good for him. He's gonna have potential, blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm excited for it, right? And the Peach standing right there behind Joe's like, oh, but not too excited, right? Like Peach's like, not too excited. Peach's like, no, I want Jamar at his best. I want everyone at their best. So that when I beat them, it's that much sweeter. That's how Pitre is, man. And it's good. I like when Pitre's talking like that. It's good. It's good. So yeah.
You got to.
Yeah.
You got to have. You better be confident because coming into like especially in 93s, holy smokes. And Jamar, a massive squat, 357.5 at SPD Rally. I mean, that's way over the world record. Jamar needs to get himself on an international competition. So North American Championship, like obviously you got to go around to Nats the whole 9, but he's got to get himself at an international competition to make that official.
Yeah.
Somewhere, some way. I mean, if what like he's got some ground to cover to be the national champion to go to 3 lift worlds, but there's more than just the world team. We have other options. And on certain years, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think we could ever get North Americans? I don't think there's enough nations to make it on par with Euros. There just isn't. But Pan American, it's once every 2 years, and it's the entire Western Hemisphere. So it's like obviously South America as well, where you have Brazil, and those aren't powerlifting nations. Brazil's had world champions, but we need more. We need more. How do we get, like, if we can get the Pan American Championships up to snuff with the Europeans, now we're talking. Now we have, like, SPD Rally was phenomenal, and SPD is doing their part. Without SPD, it would have been a different conversation. I know a lot of people when they were coming over were saying, if I don't make a world team, am I just like, what am I doing here? Sitting out for a year? And
Yeah.
SPD is like, hold the phone. We
We got something for you. Yeah.
yeah. Don't worry. We got something.
Yeah.
Thank God. They're doing rally, and that's just the beginning. But can we do an international competition where, like, the Pan Ams become caught up to Euros? Like, can these South American nations catch up? Like, what are you seeing? What are we thinking? It's once every 2 years.
Man, it's one of those things where I think there just has to be there has to be a growth in the interest of powerlifting and the interest of people who are willing to run those type of things. That's what I think it is. There's no shortage of lifters for it, right? Like, because if you can get people to say, okay, well, I couldn't get into Wilson this route, but I have this option and this option. You're gonna have people do it. You're gonna have the second place 93 at nationals go do it. They're gonna have the second place 83 go do that. Absolutely. But it's just like, okay, do we have enough people? Do we have enough bandwidth to get that going, right? Especially when we look at it, like, even like, for Power American itself, it's still a growing thing. You know what I mean? In of itself, there's still, I was talking to a lot of the higher ups there, like, and was like, they're trying to do this, trying to get growth more the local scene. So there's still so much happening with that already. To where it's like, you just need the manpower to be able to get stuff like that going. And then of course, the governing bodies that are part of, like, each area have to all be on board. So it's not that it can't happen. I just feel like it's something that's going to take a lot of time and manpower. And I think if we can, if PLA, right, can get more established first and get that kind of settled up, like near, like, not necessarily near, like closer, like kind of like what USAP already has established, something like that. And then you have the extra help and manpower to kind of go, hey, let's go. We're going to sit you here. You're going to try to get this going and that going. Then yeah. But man, who knows how long that's going to take? You know what I mean? It just kind of depends on where the overall growth comes and stuff like that. It would be cool to see, though, because I think it'd be cool to have those options, or even not necessarily that, something where there can be these other routes for people to still potentially, go and do stuff like that. I think that would be cool.
Like, if you look at, because Pan Ams with all of the Americas together, you have Carlos from Guyana. You have Dominic, who kind of is pulling a Carlos. He was in the Group B, but he was, I think, top 6 in the 83s, and he looks like he's going to emerge in 83s himself. So if Guyana starts emerging more in the 93s, and then you got Rondell Hunt from Trinidad and Tobago, who would be in the Pan Ams as well. Jamaica's got some athletes that are burgeoning. Sammy DePass in the 76s. Like, it's in some of these other nations, it's starting. And as powerlifting is getting bigger and bigger, platforms getting bigger and bigger, you need certain stars to emerge, characters like Carlos, whatever, and it just sparks some popularity within these nations. And all we need is, out of all these nations, enough that if America sends Gavin and Carlos is there, and America sends, and if Dominic rises from top 6 to starts shooting up the ranks more, as long as we just have some meat on that bone. And of course, you got Canada, and Canada's got some hitters too in different weight classes, sometimes world champions even. Now we're talking Pan Ams can be an international event. It's going to take some time, though, to your point. And I do like, at one point, Jamaica sent their national team to Powerlifting America Nationals for competition with their judging alongside, like, America's world champions that were there to help grow them. And that was I loved that they did that. Hopefully we could do that more with some of these nations on the rise that are in the Pan Ams. Come as guest lifters to Powerlifting America, because travel and all the rest of it is difficult as well. And we understand that. If it's easier to get to, if it's in one of the southern states and easier enough to get the Powerlifting America Nationals, come on up as a guest lifter, lift alongside Perk, lift alongside, all the guys we just mentioned, get that experience head to head. And what that'll do to help grow when people are watching the stream from Jamaica or whatever nations it is And now, let piggyback off of these stars. The strongest nation in the world is US. It's in North America. It's in the Western Hemisphere, the Pan Ams. Work together like that. I loved that they did that year one. I'm not sure. I think there was conflict of scheduling year two, but if they could continue to do it with all these other nations, start
Yeah,
working together like that, I think that's another avenue to help
yeah.
grow in these other nations for sure.
Or if they can even like, if you have SBD or other companies in general hosting meets like the SBD we just did, but in these other areas and be like, hey, we're going to take lifters from the US. We're going to fly y'all out to come do this meet here in this area to grow the sport, get more eyes on it in this area, while also
That's a good idea.
also being like, hey, if you're like, because the SBD rally meet, they had like the local, they had like the non-prime time version, the prime time version. So it can be a meet where like the meets in the area where the locals can just sign up for the morning version, then have that prime time one in the evening, fly these lifters out. So that way they don't have to finish it out of pocket, knowing it's kind of like, hey, we're spending this money to bring these lifters here to grow it in this area, get more interest and see where that goes. It's kind of like, I think that's kind of where you have to start to build it up that way possible.
That's okay. First off, that's way better than my idea. But listen, like I've been to Jamaica. There, it's beautiful. I've been to some of these other nations, like tourist thing. It's beautiful. If SBD did that, and you don't have to fly a huge amount of people like a nationals because rally is all elite. So you're just flying out the top end group A prime time, which isn't a shitload of flights, whatever. You fly them out. And like you said, all the Bs in the earlier is all local lifters. Do you know how many more people are going to show up and want that experience? And then the group A lifters afterwards get to party at a resort.
And hang out with them. Exactly.
Paradise. It's like they will be like, thank you for hosting it. That'd be an amazing extra long weekend for them. I think that's a great idea. And in terms of expansion, man, that'll do it.
I think it works because I'm thinking about how much more invested I am now in Worlds and wanting to go back again, right? And I'm like, well, what made it that way? What did I like about the experience? Well, I like the area I was in, like new culture, going to these restaurants, meeting new people, and the fact that like I got to train with Jurins. I train with Jurins. I train with the meal. You get to talk to these people that you follow, that you look up to, whatever. And it's like, and then it makes you want to go back to stuff like that again. So it's like, okay, we'll take that same concept, do it on a slightly smaller scale, and give those people that same type of experience. I think it works. I think it works for growing things for sure.
Yeah, I think you got it, man. Hopefully, we'll see. I mean, SBD, we're putting a lot on SBD, right?
Yeah.
We got to do a lot, but they do a lot. And we'll see what they end up doing. What do you think is the hottest division in powerlifting right now? Because I'm conflicted. At Worlds, the best session for me was the 66s. All three guys, same total, a podium, exact same total. The storylines, the back and forth 66s. But the biggest moment was 83s when Jurins came out for that last deadlift. I'd never in my life seen a crowd react and receive him like that. In that moment, like it top down wasn't 66s. And throw out wasn't 66s because we didn't know exactly until deads. It almost like it was a story unfolding. Whereas 66s, you walked in that day knowing, I don't know.
Yeah.
You like from start to beginning was amazing. So I think the greatest moment, 83s. However, now look at the 83s with Joey B and all the fellas at Rally. 93s are what they are. Like the 93s are absolutely bonkers. The return of Kaiko and Juwan coming over. I don't know, dog. And then women's. We'll throw the women's in there, or we could separate it. The hottest for women's, hottest for men's. Let's separate. It's easier that way.
Yeah, man. I feel like just the most competitive class still in terms of how close everyone truly is still 93s. I think they're the most competitive. But I think the hottest weight class right now has to be women's. Because if we just look at it, right, at this point, you got Russell, who's arguably just one of the most, not the most powerful, popular powerlifters in the game, just period. Then you got Jurins, who now has, yes, Great Britain, but really just all of Europe supporting back him, the man who beat the unbeatable Russell Orgy. But then you also got Joe Bornstein, like the junior menace, right? So it's kind of like you've got all these major categories covered. Russell appeals to not just powerlifting, but general fitness and influence. They know who he is, the key what he does. Jurins has that appeal for like the European nations as well as just being like, wow, this guy's been doing it for this long, I can still get it. And then you've got a junior who's right there in the mix, out totaling all of them technically, right? Which, we know that juniors like to copy juniors and follow juniors. So I feel like in terms of total collective eyes and storylines, because each of these guys has personality, they have story, they're not afraid to speak their mind and stuff like that, which not to say it's not the case with the 66s, but it's like, we don't necessarily get to hear from as many of them, right? They don't hear them talk about as much of their personal background. Obviously Jonathan does a little bit, but with all of these guys, they've all been on podcasts, they're all kind of well known. There's lots of stories in the mix. And then if you look outside the top 3, down to like the top 10, man, just how close everything, even for the 93s, it's not, like 93 is more competitive because the top 5 are all really close, but they're not as deep as they, you know what I mean? So I feel like right now, if I'm like the hottest class most people like focus on or talking about, it's probably the 83s right now. That can always shift, but for the men's side, I definitely would think so. I don't know. Would you agree with that? Like what do you think? I know it's tough, but
so yeah, frick. Okay, I will say I'm going to agree with you right now. The hottest has got to be 83s.
yeah,
Like in turn, like just let's not say most competitive yet. Put a pin in that one for a second.
yeah,
But let's say straight up the hottest.
yeah,
My God, what happened in terms of a moment? The 83s and Russ and Jurins stole the show at Worlds, and we're still riding that high. We need to sort that battle out. Then Joey emerging like he did, the storylines, the star power Russ brings, the excitement, the emergence of a new force Joey brings, but then the comeback late in the game, third act story that Jurins is that gives belief to underdogs everywhere. And to be like, no, it's not over for me yet. No, I don't care what my age is. I don't care how long in the game it was. I don't care how far back. Like that one video that Money Mo made where it was Jurins throughout the war, throughout the history of worlds, like 8th place, 13th place, all the rest of it to first place. It's a remarkable story. All these guys, like you can't, it's the perfect storm. I agree right now.
yeah,
Competitiveness or whatever is a tougher conversation, but in terms of hot,
sure. Yeah,
you get no hotter. And then the undefeated guy who lost, now it's like, oh, okay, all right, everybody's styling on me now, huh? Everybody who was waiting for me to lose, I lost. Okay, now I'm coming back. You have all of them.
yeah,
You have all of them.
yeah. I think the views themselves speak for it too. Like if you look at any time Russell competes, right? Even when it's been a thing, right? When it was the classic Russell versus Sean, it was always Russell came. That live stream always got those views. Like it's like I think it's hard to say it's just not the hottest. Right? Like I said, not no competitive, but definitely I think the hottest for sure.
And then now competitive, this is a tougher conversation
Yeah,
because
yeah, for sure. Because it's like,
I
dude,
mean,
you could argue 66s, you could argue 93s, you could argue 83s to a degree. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough.
What the fellas did at Rally, like obviously Joey B doing what he did with 865. Russ has done 860. Now Jurins beat a guy who's hitting 860. So he's like, okay, I didn't do 860s, but I've defeated a guy head up. But then the other fellas at Rally, 835, 840, 840. I mean, those guys are like doing phenomenally. But then you got the 66s, the return of Daniel Clements, all 3 of those guys on the podium. And then you got Charlie, who narrowly didn't make it to Worlds. Charlie's back, and Charlie's like, okay, my friends, don't look past me. I mean, the 66s in America is going to be ridiculous, let alone the Worlds is so tight. Kyoto's like, my man, if I get deadlifts on point, you guys are all dead. Like they're all, you could make it 66 is crazy. And then you have like the 93s we already touched on, which is, I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm conflicted about what's the most competitive.
Yeah, because I almost said I would maybe slightly give the edge to the 93s just because even though Daniel hasn't done on the world stage, look at where Daniel's like some of his best totals have been relatively, right? I was gonna say it kind of like puts him above the pack a little bit, but then I was like, but technically you can say the same thing for Juwan locally. You know what I mean? So
I know
it's hard to say. I think for me, I think I may still give it to the 93s just because for the mere fact that it's one of these things where it's like, okay, like for example, a meal, right? Had it locked in all the way. And then that one missed pull right?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that's not the case with the 66, but it's kind of like, okay, Jonathan, right? Coming in the lead, all that type of stuff. But it's like, even if he gets all those pulls, if you have this other guy that can pull so much more, it's just different ways of looking at it. But I think the reason why I might still have to give it to the 93s is because of like they're so close that where that kind of total has been is kind of stuck around the same area for a long time, right? And I think there's the other difference too. 66 is yes competitive, but I do think 93s has closer to the depth of the 83s while keeping the competitiveness of the 66s. Like if we really list out all the 93s here nationally, like look to the US, but then all of them collectively, and you do the same with the 66, I think the 93s get a little bit deeper as a whole in terms of how close it is. But you could argue either way. So
I agree. First off, with John, I have no idea what he's going to end up doing, and if he is a guy that can pull away, like obviously he took Jesse Norris's record for in the USAPL. If he could pull away, we'll see. But we've also seen you can't take for granted. I know he's world class for sure. Where he lies in the world, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. Yet to be seen because it's another ball game at certain levels with everyone else there. Proof is in the pudding. He knows that he's a confident young man. They're all confident they're going to go in there guns blazing. Do you know what the deal with Daniel Clements is? Was he coming? I think it was referenced on the stream that he was coming back from some injury. And you're right, he's posted up some monster totals. Do you know where he's at and what's going on there? Or?
Yeah, so obviously, he competed at the SBD meet, and definitely way healthier than what he was, and we had to pull out of PLA-NAS because he wasn't healthy. So right now, so I was talking to his coach Matt at home Systematic Strengths while there, and he came in healthier. They still only push things, I believe, saying so much because they want to be careful. Because it's like, okay, if we push too much in training, then we get hurt again. What happens? So I think it's still kind of like steadily coming again, rebuilding and whatnot. But I think it's definitely safe to say that he's, he's back, he's on. I know he's going for PL and nats and stuff like that. So as of right now, unless something changed, I know he will be there. And I think right now, just even based on what he just did at this meet, but if he continues to be healthy, I think it's one of those things where you can make a toss between him and Jonathan as the favorite for. But I mean, like you said, look at how close Charlie was, like a few inches away from blocking out the pool of being the winner, right? I think if Daniel Clements comes in like on and healthy and hits like he's not necessarily you get stronger, but just hits the best that he's already hit before, I think that's hard to beat. That's very hard to beat. Yeah.
He's for sure would be the favorite due to he'd be the strongest guy in the room based off of numbers.
Yeah.
Undeniable numbers, he's the strongest guy in the room. But we've seen it's got to play out. Yeah. So I wouldn't get super duper ahead of myself, but for sure would be the favorite based off of that. But I mean, obviously, Jonathan Garcia has won repeatedly, made it to Worlds repeatedly, and finished on the podium. And there's a reason for that too. And talking about, he's actually with Joey Flex now. Let's see what the heck happens.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
So whatever. You never know what the frick happens. Sometimes these guys who late in the game are like, I got to shake something up. Maybe we see some pull away. Maybe it's not enough time yet, but we see. I mean, you don't need a lot of difference when the race is that tight. Is there any other points we haven't hit up yet, my dude? We have been chatting forever. We're chatting for like 4 hours, my man. There's a 2-minute pee break in there, but good God, have we touched up on everything? Is there anything you think we missed?
I feel like we did, man. We talked about the SBD Raleigh meet, which ran super well. That was a lot of fun. That was exciting. We talked about Chris in the 83. We talked about Jamar, talked about Bolstein. We talked about Worlds. Feel like that's about it. At least until Sheffield rolls around. Yeah. Talked about the Olympics. So I mean,
we crushed.
Covered a little bit of everything. Yeah.
We got to do this again. Keep in touch, my man. You guys said you would come in the Worlds. You showed up, showed out, did phenomenally, collected some world titles, and collected some medals. And we're gonna see more in the future. I'm glad you're on this side, man. I'm glad we get to see each other in person. All your athletes came over and glad to see everybody in person. It's a whole nother ballgame when you see people. It's fun podcasting. We have great discussions, and I'm grateful for that. But it's also pretty cool seeing people in person, be able to hang out in the whole nine. And dude, the future is bright. The future is freaking everyone's for the most part under the same banner now. So all these super clashes, we're gonna see them. This is
I'm looking forward to it, man.
golden era.
Like I told you before, my clients are about the action. I'm about the action. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun rest of the year and a fun next year as well.
Thank you for coming on, my dude. We'll keep in touch. Everybody listening, please do subscribe. Give us high ratings as per usual. And until next time, 6-pack Lapadat, 6 up. And we are